The rebirth of a beautiful young woman. Wanwan was half leaning against the headboard. A maid beside her was carrying a tray, ready to leave. Suddenly, Wanwan spoke up, "Where's Zhouzhou? Hasn't he come back yet?" The maid turned back and answered respectfully, "Madam, it's about to pour outside." Old Madam called and said the roads aren't safe. The young master will stay at the old house tonight and won't be coming back. Upon hearing that, Wanwan's expression dimmed slightly. She didn't say anything more, only gave a small nod. The maid quietly left the bedroom, leaving her alone, quietly leaning against the bed. She sat there dazed for quite a while before finally picking up her phone from the bedside table. She glanced at the time. It was already 10 o'clock. But at this hour, her son Zhouzhou was likely still awake. After hesitating for a few seconds, Wanwan dialed his number. The sound of the ringing tone beep 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 came through. Though it was just a short wait, it felt unbearably long to Wanwan. Finally, just before the call was about to end automatically, it was answered. "Mom." 15-year-old Zhouzhou's voice still carried a hint of youthful immaturity, but the emotional distance in his tone toward Wanwan was unmistakable. A pang of pain struck Wanwan's heart, and she struggled to speak. "Zhouzhou." Zhouzhou picked up on the sorrow in her voice, but he said nothing, quietly waiting for what his mother would say next. But he waited for a long time without hearing another word. If not for the faint sound of her heavy breathing on the other end, he would have thought the call had already ended. In the end, it was Zhouzhou who gave in first. A little helplessly, he softened his tone and said, "The weather's bad tonight. There might be a heavy storm at any moment. Grandma didn't feel safe letting me go back, so I'm staying here tonight. You're not in good health, so rest early, okay?" Wanwan had so many things she wanted to say to her son, but all those words were like a tangled ball of yarn. She couldn't find the starting point and didn't know how to begin. In the end, all her feelings were reduced to one sentence: "All right. Take good care of yourself, Zhouzhou." Zhouzhou frowned slightly. He felt something odd about this call, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. He was about to say something more, but the call had already ended. Staring at the phone screen showing the call had ended, Zhouzhou sat in silence for a few seconds, then gave up thinking about it. He put down the phone and went to sleep. After all, he still had school tomorrow. After hanging up, Wanwan made another call to a man named Zhouzhou. He was her husband, the man she loved but could never truly have. He was the source of all the misery in her life. This call, too, was answered not long after it was placed. She instinctively called out, "Zhouzhou." The man on the other end responded in a deep voice, then asked, "Why aren't you asleep yet? Can't fall asleep? Did you take your medicine tonight?" "I took the medicine. I just wanted to call you," Wanwan replied. She had once heard that people could sense it when they were nearing death. Maybe she could feel it too. That's why she had called her son and now him. Even if this was the last time, she wanted to say goodbye. But after the call connected, she realized she didn't even know what to say. Between them, so many years had passed, worn away until there was nothing left to say. After a moment of silence, Zhouzhou finally said, "Try to rest early. I'll be done here soon. Once I get back." Chapter 2, I regret it. "Zhouzhou, I regret it." Wanwan suddenly spoke. Before Zhouzhou could react, she repeated it with difficulty. "Zhouzhou, I regret it." Tears welled up in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. She tried her best to suppress her emotions, but her voice still trembled with sobs. On the other end of the line, Zhouzhou froze. Hearing her muffled sobbing, his fingers subconsciously tightened around the phone. His Adam's apple bobbed as he tried to speak several times, but in the end, he only let out a sigh. With a trace of weariness in his tone, he comforted her. "Wanwan, don't overthink things. I'll come home as soon as I wrap up work here. Just stay at home and wait for me, okay?" Wanwan let out a long breath, as if finally releasing a burden she had carried for years. "All right. The weather's been bad lately. Take care of yourself. I'm tired. I want to sleep." "Then sleep. Good night," Zhouzhou said softly. "Good night." After speaking, Wanwan ended the call herself, letting the phone slip to the side of her pillow. She then closed her eyes. Tears slid silently from the corners of her eyes, trickling down her cheeks and soaking into the pillow, leaving behind a faint, damp stain. Thunder roared outside. Shen couldn't shake off the growing unease in his chest. Especially when he thought of Wanwan, his heart thudded uncontrollably. Like something bad was about to happen. He stood silently for a while, then picked up his phone and called the landline at the villa. He first asked about Wanwan's condition. Once he was reassured that she was in her room resting, he finally let out a small breath of relief. He instructed the housekeeper to take good care of Wanwan. The housekeeper agreed immediately. No one in the villa dared disobey his orders. But even after hanging up, Shen couldn't calm down. It felt as though a voice was screaming inside him, "Go back. Go back now." The urge was overwhelming. He couldn't ignore it. In the end, Shen walked out of the guest room and knocked on the secretary's door next door. Assistant Chen quickly opened it. "President Shen, is something wrong?" "Book me the next flight back to Jing City," Shen said, his tone urgent and serious. Assistant Chen hesitated, wanting to remind him that they had a client meeting early the next morning. But seeing the look on Shen face, he swallowed the words and went to book the ticket without protest. Shen returned to his room to pack his things. A few minutes later, Assistant Chen returned with a troubled expression. Holding his phone, he said, "President Shen, there's a heavy rainstorm in Jing City tonight. All flights have been grounded." Shen's brows knitted tightly. After a moment of silence, he said again, "Then check their high-speed trains. They should still be running. Book a ticket." Though Assistant Chen was puzzled by his boss's sudden urgency, had something happened to Madam. He knew it wasn't his place to ask. His job was simply to follow orders. About 20 minutes later, Assistant Chen was driving Shen toward the high-speed rail station. The city they were in wasn't too far from Jing City, only about a 3-hour ride by high-speed train. Before they even entered Jing City, the rain had already begun. The further they went, the heavier the rain became. Large raindrops pelted the windows, making loud crashing sounds, as if threatening to shatter the glass. Chapter 3, Death from Depression. Shen's uneasiness in his heart became more and more obvious. The cell phone suddenly rang. Although the sound was not very loud, it made Shen's heart tremble violently, as if something disappeared from his heart at that moment. Shen stared blankly at the phone that was still ringing. Assistant Chen beside him frowned and whispered, "Boss." Shen seemed to have been possessed, and only a shell remained, without any reaction. Assistant Chen had to reach out and carefully pull Shen's arm. Shen suddenly came back to his senses, and hurriedly picked up the phone and answered the call, "Hello." The panicked sobbing of the maid came from the phone. "First, sir, the lady she is not breathing." Shen didn't even understand what that meant. He just asked stupidly, "What do you mean she's not breathing? What happened to her?" "I listened to you and kept an eye on the upstairs. It was past 12 o'clock and my wife hadn't gone to bed yet. I went upstairs to ask, and the madam said she wanted to eat rice dumplings with fermented glutinous rice. I went downstairs to ask someone to prepare it. When I came back, the madam had already." The servant sobbed and finally broke down in tears and could no longer speak. Shen pinched the phone hard with his fingers, as if he wanted to crush it. Assistant Chen was sitting next to Shen. Although he couldn't hear the content of the call clearly, he could hear crying coming from the phone. Coupled with Shen's dazed look, Assistant Chen became uneasy. What on earth happened? He didn't know when the call was hung up. Later, the phone rang several times. Some calls were from Shen's parents, and some were from Shen Wenju, but he didn't answer any of them. He kept telling himself in his heart that it must be because he was on a business trip for too long and hadn't been home for a whole week. Wanwan was angry and was deliberately making trouble for him. It must be like this. After their high-speed train arrived at the station, Assistant Chen followed Shen quickly with a big umbrella and took him to the car that had been waiting at the high-speed train station. As soon as he sat down in the car, Shen told the driver to go back to the villa. It was a little after 2 in the morning and there were very few vehicles on the street, but because of the heavy rain, the driver couldn't drive too fast, so when they arrived at the villa, it was exactly 3 o'clock. At 3 o'clock in the morning, the lights in the Shen family villa in Beihai Bay were on. Shen got out of the car and walked quickly into their villa in the heavy rain without waiting for Assistant Chen to come over and hold an umbrella for him. At this moment, everyone in the Shen family villa was in a state of panic. When a servant saw Shen coming in, he was like seeing the dawn, and shouted excitedly, "Sir! Shen Yi did not respond, but ran quickly to the bedroom upstairs. When he appeared at the bedroom door, he didn't dare to go in. He stood there wet all over, with his hands clenched into fists. He tried several times to muster up the courage to go in, but then he found out that all this was just Yi Wanwan being angry with him. But no matter how hard he prepared himself mentally, he couldn't get in. Shen Wenju, who was standing beside the bed, noticed something. He raised his head and looked towards the door, and his eyes met Shen Yi's. Shen Yi didn't want to believe it. He felt that Yi Wanwan was just throwing a tantrum. But when he saw his son's red eyes with uncontrollable sadness in them, Shen Yi's heart sank completely. Chapter 4. She wants to see me one last time. Yi Wanwan was buried 3 days later. After the funeral, Shen Yi and Shen Wenju returned home, both sitting on the sofa in the living room with expressionless faces. After a long time, Shen Yi suddenly called the servant over, and then asked in a hoarse voice, "Did she say anything before she left?" The servant looked embarrassed, but still shook his head honestly. Yi Wanwan passed away very suddenly, and no one knew about it. In the last moment of her life, no one was by her side, and she left silently alone. Shen Yi suddenly felt a sharp pain in his heart. He couldn't imagine death, and he couldn't imagine what Yi Wanwan felt when facing death. Is she afraid, or does she feel she is finally free? Shen Yi didn't understand. They clearly shouldn't be like this, so why did they become like this? However, this question is meaningless. Yi Wanwan is no longer here, his wife has passed away. Shen Wenju, who was standing aside, kept his head down, shedding tears silently. When Shen Yi heard the noise and came to his senses, Shen Wenju was already sobbing. Zhouzhou! Shen Yi shouted with difficulty. Shen Wenju raised his head and looked at his father. Tears blurred his vision. After a long while, Shen Wenju said with a choked voice, "I'm sorry." Shen Yi was a little dazed, not understanding why he said such a thing, but he soon got the answer from Shen Wenju. Shen Wenju said very sadly, "She called me that night and wanted me to go home. She wanted to see me for the last time, but I rejected her. I told her it was raining so hard that I wasn't going home. Actually, I just don't want to go back. I hate that she always demands and restricts me in the name of doing good for me. Whenever I try to resist, she becomes hysterical and acts like a lunatic. I don't want to face someone who doesn't even have reason. But I didn't even see her for the last time. The last thing she said to me was to take good care of myself. She must have been very sad and upset at that time. Even his wish to see me one last time was rejected." Shen Wenju tried hard to hold back his tears, but he couldn't. He refused the woman's request to see him one last time. At this moment, he didn't even dare to call her Mom. He felt that he was not worthy of being her son. Only then did Shen Yi realize that Yi Wanwan had called both him and Shen Wenju that night. Perhaps Yi Wanwan had already sensed something at that time, and she was deliberately saying goodbye to him. And in that phone call, Yi Wanwan said she regretted it. She said she regretted it. At the end of their marriage, Yi Wanwan said she regretted it. Shen Yi felt even more heartbroken. Their business marriage was fine, but Yi Wanwan loved him at first. He might not have had love for Yi Wanwan at the beginning, but he had never thought of separating or betraying her. He thought they would be like many other people, without passionate love, but would still support each other throughout their lives. Since when did the three of them start to feel estranged from each other? When they faced each other, there was no love in their hearts, only exhaustion. Did it start when Yi Wanwan started to suspect him? Did it start when Yi Wanwan went to the company and beat up his female secretary? Or did it start when he got angry and deliberately forgot their wedding anniversary? Or some other time? Shen Yi didn't know, and he didn't want to know. Yi Wanwan is no longer here. He lost his wife, and Shen Wenju also lost his mother. Chapter 5 finally woke up. Yi Wanwan seemed to have had a very long dream. In the dream, she became the person she hated the most. In the dream, she dead. There was a subtle sound in her ear and she wanted to open her eyes, but she felt so tired that she didn't even have the strength to open her eyes. But the sound in her ears became clearer and clearer, as if a quarrel was about to break out. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but frown and opened her eyes with difficulty. The moment she opened her eyes, the glaring light made her feel uncomfortable, and she subconsciously raised her arms to block the glaring light. Just as she moved, a piercing pain came over her. With a hiss, Yi Wanwan took a breath. The arguing in my ears stopped instantly, and someone ran to the bedside and asked worriedly, "Wanwan, are you awake?" Yi Wanwan didn't see the person clearly, and their voice in her ears was not very clear. "Wanwan, how do you feel? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" the girl asked anxiously, but Yi Wanwan was slow to respond and never answered. The girl became even more anxious. "Forget it, let's get a doctor to check it out." Soon a doctor came over and checked Yi Wanwan's basic vital signs. "Don't worry, Missy is fine now. She just has some skin injuries on her arm. She will be fine after a few days of rest." The girl breathed a sigh of relief. "Fortunately, everything is fine." After saying that, the girl sat down beside the bed and said apologetically, "Wanwan, I'm so sorry about what happened today." When Yi Wanwan saw the girl's appearance, she seemed a little confused. She didn't recognize the person in front of her. But then she was stunned, staring at the person in front of her like a fool. "Wanwan, what's wrong with you?" The girl looked at Yi Wanwan's appearance and couldn't help but worry again. "Didn't she say that there was nothing wrong? Why did Yi Wanwan look at me like this? Was she stupid?" Yi Wanwan's voice was hoarse, and she couldn't help but shout, "Shu Lian." "Well, what's wrong?" Shu Lian looked at her without blinking, waiting for Yi Wanwan to speak. However, after Yi Wanwan called out her name, she became silly again and just kept staring at her. Shu Lian couldn't help but frowned. "Wanwan." Shu Lian was about to cry. "Didn't the doctor say it was okay? This didn't look like it was okay at all." Yi Wanwan frowned. Her mind was a mess and she had no idea what was going on. Before Yi Wanwan could figure it out, another girl standing next to her spoke up, "Yi Wanwan, you're finally awake. You almost scared us to death." Yi Wanwan looked over when she heard the voice and her brows furrowed even more. She also had an impression of this person. Looking around again, Yi Wanwan quickly realized that this was not the Bahaiwan Villa. If she was still alive, she would be in the hospital if not at home. This was neither her home nor a hospital. And the two people in front of me who were supposed to be dead. Yi Wanwan was filled with panic. What on earth was going on? In a strange place, she met two people who had died 10 years ago. Was she dreaming? Or was she dead too? So she saw Zhang Xiaowei and Shu Lian who had passed away unexpectedly. For a moment, Yi Wanwan had no idea what was going on. Chapter 6 Reborn. "Wanwan, then you should go to bed early. If there is nothing else, we'll leave first." Shu Lian stood at the bedroom door, looking a little panicked. "Yeah." Yi Wanwan was still in a daze and just nodded. There are too many things she doesn't understand, and now she just wants to be alone and calm down. Shu Lian frowned, wanting to say something to explain today's unexpected situation. But in the end, nothing was said. Anyway, Yi Wanwan fell into the swimming pool accidentally, and she is fine now, so the matter should be over, right? Shu Lian gritted her teeth. No matter what happened today was an accident. As their host, she had done everything she could. After watching Shu Lian and Zhang Xiaowei leave, Yi Wanwan quickly closed the door. Yi Wanwan's heart was beating violently as she was digesting all these incredible things. She realized that when she woke up she was at Shu's house, in Shu Lian's bedroom. Yi Wanwan quickly went over it in her mind. Originally, today was Shu Lian's birthday and she was going to attend Shu Lian's birthday party. The reason why she was unconscious was that she accidentally fell into the swimming pool and was choked by the water. In fact, she didn't just want to attend Shu Lian's birthday party. She had never played together with Shu Lian's group of sisters. Under normal circumstances, she would not go at all. The reason why today is gone is just because of a woman Yinshin, who was rumored to have an affair with Shenyi last week. Shenyi is her lover, so of course she cannot tolerate anyone deliberately getting close to Shenyi. Also, because she is the only daughter in the Yi family, she has been pampered since she was a child, which leads to her strong possessiveness. As long as she believes that something belongs to her, no one else can touch it. So when she found out that the 18th tier internet celebrity was also at Shu Lian's birthday party, she went there alone. Anyway, Shu Lian specially sent her an invitation, just to let her go over and watch the show. Since Shu Lian herself was not worried about her birthday party being ruined, she naturally wouldn't worry about it. So she went to Shu Lian's birthday party. Something like this had happened before in her memory, but she didn't fall into the swimming pool. And she didn't fall into the swimming pool accidentally. She clearly remembered that someone pushed her from behind. Yi Wanwan couldn't imagine that everything had changed so suddenly. But there were too many memories in her mind, so deep, so deep that she clearly understood that those memories were not dreams, but her own experiences. At this moment, Wanwan was looking at this familiar yet unfamiliar bedroom. This was her and Shenyi's wedding room. To be precise, this wedding room was what it looked like when they just got married. In fact, she has forgotten a lot of details. She only remembers that when she first got married, the small sofa in the bedroom was a dark-colored one, but because she was eating snacks on the sofa, she got oil stains on the sofa. Later, she picked out a light-colored sofa, which was her favorite color. Also, in the 4th year of her marriage to Shenyi, she had a big fight with Shenyi and smashed the wedding photo hanging on the bedroom wall to pieces. Later, that wall became empty, but now her wedding photo with Shenyi is still hanging on that wall. Chapter 7. My little wife is waiting for me at home. Wanwan's body was shaking uncontrollably. She slid down weakly from the door and finally sat on the ground. It was really hard for her to accept that she was actually reborn. Back to before the tragedy happened, back to when I had just married Shenyi, back to the time when I could still turn back. Hee. Wanwan put her hands in her long hair, she held her head and cried and laughed, like a madman. Wanwan went out fine, but was sent back very weak in the end. Naturally, the housekeeper had to ask her about the situation. Xu Lian spoke vaguely, and just apologized to the housekeeper again and again, saying that he would come to apologize again later. After Xu Lian left, the housekeeper quickly called Shenyi. The master had said that if the madam had any problems, she could call him. The housekeeper repeated to Shenyi what Miss Xu had said on the phone. How is she now? Shenyi spoke in a calm tone, giving people a stable feeling, as if he didn't care. Madam said she was a little tired and has gone back to her room to rest. The housekeeper answered truthfully. Yeah. Shenyi responded in a low voice, and then continued, she can't swim, so she must be scared. Ask someone to pay more attention to her. Yes, sir. It was 6 o'clock in the afternoon, time to get off work. Vehicles and pedestrians were constantly traveling on the streets. The already congested city center was even more congested due to the rush hour. In the Jinghong building, located in a bustling area, some people are still busy working, preparing to work overtime, while others have already packed up and are ready to go home. After hanging up the phone with the housekeeper, Shenyi continued with the work at hand, but he stopped after just 2 minutes. He frowned slightly and stared at the computer screen, his mind full of the image of Wanwan falling into the water. He clearly didn't see it, but the scene appeared clearly in his mind, as if he had seen it with his own eyes. After sitting there blankly for more than 10 seconds, Shenyi encrypted and saved all the files on the computer without hesitation and then turned off the computer. He also sorted out the files on the desk and put them in a drawer and locked it. Then he stood up, took the suit jacket on the back of the chair and put it on quickly, picked up the car keys and walked out of the office without hesitation. Outside the office is the open office area of the planning department. After Shenyi entered the elevator, some people couldn't help but start gossiping. Why did Mr. Shen leave so early today? Didn't he say before that since he would be stuck in traffic if he got off work at this time anyway, he might as well work overtime at the company and go back when the traffic is not jammed? A female colleague next to him laughed and said, how can this be the same? Don't forget, our Mr. Shen is now a family man, with a lovely wife waiting for him at home. The fact that Prince Jinghong had just gotten married not long ago was publicly reported. Although no one had seen the woman's appearance, everyone knew that she was the eldest daughter of the Yi family. That's right. He's already married but still comes home so late every day. Isn't he afraid that his wife will make him kneel on the washboard? As soon as these words came out, there was a burst of laughter, and one of them said, for a man like our Mr. Shen, Mrs. Shen probably wouldn't want to let him go. Anyway, I can't bear to do it. After a burst of laughter, those who had to work overtime continued to work overtime, and those who had to leave work also left work. Chapter 8. She is just a marriage partner. As expected, Shenyi got stuck downstairs of the company. If there was no traffic jam, it should have been a 40-minute drive, but due to the traffic jam, the time doubled. But Shenyi still sat in the car calmly, without any sign of impatience. After all, this was the result he had already anticipated. At 7:30, Shenyi returned to their Bahaiwan villa. The housekeeper was a little surprised to see him come back at this time. Sir, you are back, have you had dinner? The housekeeper was hired after Shenyi and Wanwan got married and moved to Bihai Bay. Originally, Shenyi's mother, Ms. Lin Shu, planned to ask the elderly who took care of daily life in the old house to come over, but considering that Yi Wanwan would feel uncomfortable and think that she deliberately asked the people in the old house to keep an eye on by Hai Bei, Ms. Linshu simply asked them to hire new servants. The new housekeeper hasn't fully figured out Shen Yi's daily routine and temperament yet, but this is the first time he has seen the male owner return to the villa before 9 o'clock in the month since the new housekeeper took office, which is indeed surprising. "Where's Wanwan?" Shen Yi asked as he walked towards the stairs. "I went to see her before dinner, and the madam said she had no appetite and didn't want to eat. She must have been scared, her eyes were red, and it looked like she had been crying." The housekeeper followed behind Shen Yi and answered respectfully and truthfully. When Shen Yi heard the housekeeper say crying, his body stiffened slightly, but he did not stop and quickly went to the bedroom upstairs. When he opened the door and walked in, Shen Yi saw Yi Wanwan sitting on the bed. Yi Wanwan seemed to be frightened by the person who suddenly broke in, but when she saw the man standing at the door, her nose felt sour and her vision became blurred. Shen Yi frowned slightly. He knew that Yi Wanwan couldn't swim and had drowned when she was a child, so she still hadn't learned to swim. So she must have been scared today. Shen Yi walked over, sat down beside the bed, reached out to smooth Yi Wanwan's messy long hair, and gently wiped away the tears that slipped from the corners of her eyes with his fingertips. "It's okay now, don't cry," Shen Yi soothed in a gentle tone. Yi Wanwan just stared at Shen Yi blankly, crying without saying a word, her eyes red, as if she had suffered great injustice. Shen Yi didn't know that she was not afraid because she fell into the swimming pool. She had just accepted the incredible fact that she was reborn. She met Shen Yi so soon, and she felt complicated for a moment. She liked the man in front of her, she liked him in her previous life, even though he died of depression in the end, but when she saw him again at this moment, she still couldn't control the love for Shen Yi in her heart. In fact, at the last moment of her previous life, she had already figured it out. The reason she and Shen Yi ended up like that was because they were not suitable for each other. When she first married Shen Yi, she was full of love. She married Shen Yi with infinite beautiful visions of love, and then expected Shen Yi to give her the same romantic love. But to Shen Yi, she was just a marriage partner. He would do what a husband should do, take care of her and love her. She could even feel that Shen Yi loved her. He remembered her favorite dishes, knew what color lipstick she liked, and knew many little habits that other people didn't know. Chapter 9: Coaxing. Compared to most people's boyfriends or husbands, Shen Yi has done a great job. But she was too greedy, she wanted more, she wanted Shen Yi's heart and eyes to be filled with only her. But Shen Yi couldn't treat her as everything in his life as much as she loved him. But she just couldn't accept a Shen Yi who didn't love her enough. She wanted Shen Yi to love her as much as she loved him, or even more. When Shen Yi failed to do what she expected, she became an irrational person and went hysterical. The more irrationally she argued and quarreled with Shen Yi, the greater the distance between them became, and they were completely trapped in an unsolvable vicious circle. The tears in Yi Wanwan's eyes flowed even more violently and she couldn't stop them. Shen Yi knew that she was frightened, but he never expected that she would be so emotional. I don't know why, but seeing her crying so aggrievedly, Shen Yi couldn't help but feel distress deep in his heart. Without even thinking, he reached out and hugged Yi Wanwan in his arms. He didn't know what he should say to comfort her, so he just patted her back gently to soothe her emotions. I don't know how long it took before Yi Wanwan's emotions gradually calmed down. She seemed to have exhausted all her energy and leaned tiredly in Shen Yi's arms. "The housekeeper said that your arm is also injured. Let me take a look." As he spoke, Shen Yi reached out and held Yi Wanwan's arm. He pushed Yi Wanwan's sleeve up, and then saw the abrasions and bruises on the inside of Yi Wanwan's right arm, and couldn't help but frowned. Why is it so serious? The originally gentle tone now became serious. Shen Yi had already learned from the housekeeper over the phone what happened at Zhou's house, and knew that Yi Wanwan had injured her arm when she fell into the swimming pool. However, when he saw that her arms were scratched and bruised, Shen Yi couldn't control his emotions and was visibly angry. Yi Wanwan lowered her head and said nothing. Shen Yi then calmed down and said, "I'll ask the doctor to take a look and give you some medicine later." Yi Wanwan still didn't say anything, and Shen Yi didn't get impatient and continued, "Dinner is ready, let's go downstairs and eat first." At this time, Yi Wanwan seemed to come back to her senses. She shook her head slightly, her voice a little hoarse, "I don't want to eat." Shen Yi paused and continued softly, "Drink some soup. You are tired today. Drink the soup and go to bed early." Yi Wanwan stopped talking again. Shen Yi thought he knew her well enough and knew that she was silent because she agreed reluctantly. Shen touched the top of her head, then stood up and walked out of the bedroom. As soon as he disappeared from the bedroom door, Wanwan, who was originally in a daze, raised her eyes and looked over. After just a few minutes, Shen returned to the bedroom. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding a small bowl in one hand and a spoon in the other. He carefully blew the soup to the right temperature before feeding it to Wanwan's mouth. Wanwan did not refuse. She just drank the soup while looking at Shen. After she finished a small bowl of soup, Shen didn't let her eat anything else. He let her lie down on the bed, covered her with a quilt and said, "Sleep well." Wanwan closed her eyes, as if ready to rest, but in fact she was not sleepy at all. She was still a little dazed and couldn't tell whether this was reality or a dream. Chapter 10, Don't Repeat the Same Mistake. Rebirth. What an incredible thing. And this incredible thing happened to her, and she didn't know why she had such an opportunity. On the one hand, Wanwan was not sleepy, but on the other hand, she was afraid to sleep. She was afraid that when she woke up, she would find that it was just a dream and there was no such thing as rebirth. She was still trapped in the swamp and unable to escape. After hearing the sound of a door closing, Wanwan opened her eyes and stared at the ceiling in a daze. The events of her past life were playing rapidly in her mind like a movie rerun. From the time she married Shen until she left alone in the end, those more than 10 years of love, hatred, and emotions seemed to have passed in a flash at this moment. All of a sudden, Wanwan seemed to have figured it out. The things that bothered her in her previous life didn't seem so important at this moment. Shen did nothing wrong. Their marriage was originally a business one and there was no emotional basis between them. And Shen did not do anything to betray their marriage after marriage, he just failed to become the person she expected him to be. And she was not wrong. She just liked Shen too much. She married Shen with too many beautiful visions of marriage, and then she delusionally hoped that he could love her as much. The fact that they lived like that in their previous life wasn't necessarily because of anyone else's fault, it was just that they were not suitable for each other. A girl who puts love above all else meets a calm and wise man. Sometimes a simple, not suitable, is enough. Tears rolled down from my eyes. She loved Shen, and she still loves Shen now, but she can't make the same mistake again. God gave her a chance to be reborn, not to let her repeat the mistakes of her previous life. Perhaps the ups and downs of the day were too exhausting. Wanwan gradually felt sleepy, her eyelids drooped uncontrollably, and she fell into a deep sleep unknowingly. After dinner, Shen returned to the bedroom first. Seeing that Wanwan had fallen asleep, he subconsciously slowed down his movements, carefully tucked the quilt into her tuck, then turned around and tiptoed out of the bedroom. Shen went to the study to deal with the work that he had not had time to finish in the company today. The next day, when Wanwan woke up, she was the only one on the huge bed. She lay there blankly for a long time before she went over everything in her mind and figured out what was going on with her. She was reborn. Really reborn. All this is not just an illusory dream. Wanwan got off the bed and went to the bathroom to wash up. When she was brushing her teeth, she still felt dazed when she looked at her young and beautiful face. "How do you feel?" The sudden sound startled Wanwan. She subconsciously turned around and looked at the source of the sound with a vigilant look. She was slightly relieved when she saw that it was Shen. But when facing Shen, Wanwan was still a little restrained and couldn't get along with him calmly. Wanwan asked, "Why are you still at home? I'm not going to the company today. How do you feel? Are you feeling better?" Shen asked with concern. In fact, it's not that he has no work today, but thinking that Wanwan was frightened yesterday, her emotions were a little unstable, and she even had nightmares in the middle of the night. He would feel at ease only after she woke up. Chapter 11, Why do I feel a little strange? It's okay. Wanwan shook her head stupidly like a rattle. Be careful with your arms and try not to let them touch water. Eat breakfast and ask the doctor to come and apply medicine. Shen said. Wanwan shook her head even more vigorously this time. No, I can do it myself. Shen looked at Wanwan with a curious look in his eyes. Why was she acting a little weird today? Wanwan loves beauty the most. In the past, whenever she got a slight bump or bruise anywhere, she would worry about leaving scars and say that she would be disfigured. Then he came close to him and kept asking her if he would still love her if she was really disfigured. Although the outside of her arm was just a scratch, the scratched area was broken and bleeding, and it still looked a little hideous. Perhaps realizing that her reaction was wrong, Wanwan quickly said, my skin is broken. Disinfection is painful. If you don't apply medicine, it might leave scars. Shinyi said seriously. Yi Wanwan was speechless. Why didn't she realize that Shinyi would lie so seriously with his eyes open? It's just a scratch, how can it leave a scar? However, Yi Wanwan did not refuse again, as she was afraid that Shinyi would see through her. In fact, she was not afraid of pain. Although she looked like a 22-year-old now, the soul in this body was a soul that had died once. How could she be like the little girl who was once pampered by the Yi family? She subconsciously refused the doctor's request to apply medicine just now, but it was because in her previous life, when her emotions became increasingly unstable and her health deteriorated, there was always a doctor by her side, so she subconsciously rejected it. After washing up, Yi Wanwan followed Shinyi downstairs and sat down in the restaurant to have breakfast. While eating breakfast, the housekeeper came over and said, "Sir, madam, the Zhouzhou family just called and said they want to come and apologize." Yi Wanwan went to attend Zhu Lian's birthday party and fell into the swimming pool at Zhu's house. Regardless of whether this incident had anything to do with Zhu Lian, whether it was an accident or someone did it deliberately, this incident happened at Zhu's house. In this case, the Zhu family has no choice but to take action, otherwise they will become enemies with the Shin family and the Yi family. Besides, how could a smart man like Shinyi not know the purpose of Zhu Lian's special invitation to Yi Wanwan? No. Shinyi picked up a crab roe bun that Yi Wanwan liked and refused in a deep voice. Okay. The butler bowed slightly and then stepped back. Yi Wanwan didn't say a word from beginning to end. She just took a bite of the bun and chewed it slowly in her mouth. Unconsciously, she began to daydream again and even stopped eating the bun. What's wrong? Shinyi looked at Yi Wanwan who was daydreaming and asked with some concern. Shinyi could notice the changes in Yi Wanwan that had started yesterday. In his eyes, Yi Wanwan was raised in the Yi family and was spoiled, so her personality was somewhat spoiled. Although he is not the kind of person who likes to bully others by taking advantage of his power, he is definitely not the kind of person who will suffer any loss or injustice. Even the business marriage in the eyes of outsiders was based on the fact that Yi Wanwan liked him. The two families only started discussing it after she personally nodded in agreement. Yi Wanwan can't swim, and falling into the swimming pool is such a big thing. If it had happened before, Yi Wanwan would definitely feel very aggrieved and would have acted like a spoiled child to him, or even to his father-in-law and mother-in-law, and then taken this opportunity to get them to agree to some small things for her. But at this moment, Yi Wanwan looked worried and seemed to be troubled. Yi Wanwan seemed to have heard something in a trance. She turned her head and looked at Shinyi in confusion. Chapter 12, Being Pushed Down. But she quickly came to her senses, straightened her body, sat upright, and even the way she looked at Shinyi changed. Yi Wanwan was helpless. There was nothing she could do. Rebirth, what an incredible thing. Moreover, in this short period of time, she really couldn't quickly adapt to the fact that she was reborn, and she was afraid that she would reveal some flaws by accident. Shinyi put down his chopsticks, looked at Yi Wanwan and asked seriously, "What's wrong with you? Did you run into any trouble?" Seeing Shinyi's serious look, Yi Wanwan could only make an excuse, "I was just wondering who pushed me into the water yesterday." In fact, she was just thinking about what she should do next. She didn't want to repeat the same mistakes, but she couldn't suddenly change her personality. If their temperament suddenly changed, would they think they were crazy? Yi Wanwan was still thinking. When Shinyi heard Yi Wanwan's words, his eyes darkened. He deliberately did not meet the Zhu family today because he knew the real reason why Yi Wanwan went to Zhu Lian's birthday party. Not everyone is qualified to muddy the waters between him and Yi Wanwan, but he didn't expect that Yi Wanwan fell into the swimming pool deliberately. Yi Wanwan couldn't swim, so the man pushed her into the pool. Was he trying to teach her a lesson, or was he trying to? For some reason, when Shinyi thought that Yi Wanwan might die and disappear from this world completely, he felt his heartbeat speed up, and even felt like he was having trouble breathing. Shinyi put down his chopsticks and took a deep breath. Only then did he feel the lump in his heart was relieved. "You said someone pushed you down?" Shinyi asked in a deep voice. Yi Wanwan frowned and thought for a few seconds, then nodded, "Yeah, I felt it, someone pushed me." Yi Wanwan was indeed struggling with what she should do, but when this matter was mentioned, she couldn't help but start thinking about it. In her previous life, she didn't fall into the swimming pool, but this time it was different. After she woke up, she had a small part of memory in her mind. That was when she walked to the edge of the swimming pool, and there was still half a meter away, but suddenly someone pushed her hard from behind. Then he fell into the swimming pool. The air pressure around Shen Yi obviously dropped by 1 degree. He tried his best to suppress his anger and assured Yi Wanwan, "I will investigate it thoroughly." "Yeah." Yi Wanwan nodded. Since someone pushed her on purpose, she certainly couldn't just ignore it. She had to find the murderer. Tilda. In the afternoon, Shen Yi received a phone call, and then went to find Yi Wanwan and told her that he was going on a business trip. Yi Wanwan then remembered that although Shen Yi was the prince of Jinghong at that time, his position in Jinghong was just a department manager, and he was often called away because of a phone call. Thinking that Shen Yi was not at home, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It just so happened that she hadn't figured out how she should get along with Shen Yi. Shen Yi packed his luggage and left in the afternoon. Yi Wanwan ate dinner alone and then returned to the bedroom. She lay on the bed, holding her phone in her hand, flipping through it unconsciously, thinking about what to do next. She liked Shen Yi. When he was young, the boy planted a seed in her heart, which then gradually sprouted and grew branches, and finally became a towering tree that could not be easily pulled out. Chapter 13. She just has psychological problems. But she didn't want to repeat the life of her previous life. She felt very painful. Shen Yi must be very tired too. Even Zhouzhou resented her. Wanting this place, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but have tears in her eyes. She knew that all this was because she was too possessive and too stubborn. In her previous life, Yi Wanwan refused to admit it, but now she has to admit it as an adult. In fact, she has psychological problems. This time she won't run away. She will see a doctor and take medicine properly. She would never make the same mistake again in her life. But her marriage with Shen Yi involved too many things, and it was impossible to end it so easily. And Zhouzhou, if she separates from Shen Yi, then her Zhouzhou will never come to her again. She was not a good mother in her previous life, and Zhouzhou didn't like her at all, but she still loved Zhouzhou very much. She had always loved Zhouzhou very much, but she used the wrong way to love Zhouzhou. Yi Wanwan lay on her back on the bed, staring at the ceiling in a daze until her eyes hurt from the light. When she came to her senses, she couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. She will still be with Shen Yi, and perhaps she will still love Shen Yi very much, but she will not love him recklessly and regard him as everything as she did in her previous life. Thinking of this, tears actually rolled down her eyes. After all, this was the person she loved deeply. Now that she had to give up, Yi Wanwan still felt uncomfortable. As for Zhouzhou, if she is lucky enough to still be his mother, she will definitely learn from the experience of her previous life and will never hurt him with her so-called love again. She will definitely work hard and learn to be a good and qualified mother. After thinking it through, Yi Wanwan felt a lot more relaxed. She turned over and got out of bed, went barefoot to the cloakroom to get a set of pajamas, and went straight to the bathroom to take a shower. After taking a shower, Yi Wanwan sat in front of the dressing table and applied skin care products. Looking at herself in the mirror, who was only in her 20s, she couldn't help but smile. If God can give her a chance to start over, she will cherish it. 3 days later, Shen Yi and his team rushed back from another place, exhausted. They first went to the company to hand over their work, and then returned home after all the work was handed over. Yi Wanwan had just finished dinner and was taking a walk in the garden to digest the food. Seeing that the roses planted in the garden were in full bloom, she stepped into the garden and prepared to pick some flowers to put in a vase. Suddenly, she heard a car horn and looked up subconsciously. Then she saw a car driving into the villa and stopping at the open space in front of the villa. When the car stopped, Yi Wanwan saw Shen Yi opening the car door and getting out. His originally relaxed expression froze on his face, and he became cautious as he looked at Shen Yi, who had just gotten out of the car. Their eyes met. Yi Wanwan swallowed hard, then pretended to be calm and greeted, "You're back." "Yeah." Shen Yi nodded. He looked a little tired, but did not return to the villa immediately. Instead, he walked towards Yi Wanwan. "There are a lot of thorns on the flowers, be careful not to scratch them," Shen Yi reminded. Yi Wanwan subconsciously glanced at her ankle, thinking that it had been scratched by the thorns, and inexplicably felt a little guilty. It was already dark, and there was only warm orange light in the garden, which wasn't that bright, and one could easily get hooked by the thorns if one wasn't careful. Chapter 14. Indulging in Shen Yi's tenderness. Shen Yi followed Yi Wanwan's line of sight and couldn't see clearly the condition of her calf, but based on Yi Wanwan's reaction, it should have been scratched. Shinyi subconsciously frowned. Don't pick it. Shinyi stretched out his hand, wanting to pull Yi Wanwan out. Because she was picking roses, Yi Wanwan's hands were inevitably covered with dew and mud. Then she looked at Shinyi's clean and bony hands, and she hesitated for a moment, and decided not to harm Shinyi. Yi Wanwan did not hold Shinyi's hand, but walked out of the flowers carefully. But Yi Wanwan's skirt was still caught by the thorns of a bunch of flowers, and her calves were also scratched by the thorns. Hiss! Yi Wanwan couldn't help but take a breath, frowned, and stopped where she was. Shinyi felt a little helpless. He took 2 steps forward, bent down to help Yi Wanwan untangle her skirt, then took Yi Wanwan's hand and led her out, seemingly not caring at all about the dust on her hands. Yi Wanwan was holding Shinyi's hand, her heart beating so fast as if it was about to jump out of her chest. She lowered her head, and her eyes were filled with uncontrollable heat. That's right. In her previous life, she was immersed in the love that Shinyi gave her and gave herself to him wholeheartedly. Then she gradually became dissatisfied and demanded more and more. As long as Shinyi failed to satisfy her, she would start to make a fuss. At first Shinyi would still listen to her, but gradually, Shinyi seemed to be tired and just let her do whatever she wanted. The colder Shinyi was, the crazier she became, and it finally got out of control. Shinyi loved her, but his love did not meet her expectations. After all the quarrels that followed, Shinyi was tired, and they were all tired. After returning to the villa, Shinyi handed all the roses that Yi Wanwan had picked to the servants, then squatted down to check her calf. Although it was only a minor scratch, tiny beads of blood appeared, which still made people feel a little uncomfortable when looking at it. Don't go next time, just let the florist do it. Shinyi frowned and said sternly. Oh. Yi Wanwan nodded obediently like a child who had made a mistake. Seeing Yi Wanwan's obedient appearance, Shinyi felt helpless again, and softened his tone a little. Let the florist clean it up tomorrow, and then you can go back later, there won't be so many thorns on the flowers. Then Shinyi asked the servant to fetch the medicine box. Yi Wanwan whispered, it's just a slight scrape. It's okay. Shinyi ignored her and waited for the servant to bring the spare medicine box from home, then began to disinfect Yi Wanwan. There was a slight stinging pain when the disinfectant touched the wound. Yi Wanwan subconsciously retracted her feet. Shinyi looked up at Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan pursed her lips and stretched her feet over again. Shinyi lowered his head and continued to help her disinfect. After disinfection, Shinyi packed up the medicine box and asked the servant to take it back. I'm a little tired. I'll go upstairs to take a shower first. Shinyi had been busy for several days in a row and was really tired now. He just wanted to take a shower and have a good sleep. Yes, go ahead. Yi Wanwan nodded quickly. Shinyi turned around and prepared to go upstairs, but just after taking 2 steps, he was stopped by Yi Wanwan. Shinyi turned around and looked at Yi Wanwan. What's wrong? Chapter 15. Is she hiding from me? Yi Wanwan blinked and asked a little stiffly, have you eaten? Shinyi shook his head and was about to say he didn't want to eat anymore when he heard Yi Wanwan continue, then I'll ask the kitchen to prepare something for you. You can come down and eat after you finish your shower. Seeing that Yi Wanwan had already spoken, Shinyi finally nodded and went upstairs to take a shower. Yi Wanwan sat in the living room, watching the servants fiddling with the roses she had picked, but her thoughts were drifting away. By the time the servant had packed the vase, Shinyi had finished his shower and came down from upstairs. Perhaps because he has been too busy with work these days, Shinyi's face is a little pale and he looks very tired. He walked towards Yi Wanwan and when he was in front of her, Yi Wanwan hadn't said anything yet, but Shinyi had already realized something was wrong. In the past, Yi Wanwan would have thrown herself into his arms as soon as he got home, acting coquettishly and saying that she missed him, while asking about his well-being. But when he came back today, Yi Wanwan didn't seem very happy, and now she still doesn't look very happy. But you can't say that Yi Wanwan doesn't care about him. Didn't she ask the kitchen to prepare food for him? But Shinyi felt that this feeling was a little strange, but he didn't know how to say it. The two of them stared at each other for more than 10 seconds. Yi Wanwan felt awkward and said quickly, dinner should be ready. Go eat something. Yeah. Shinyi responded, and then asked for something else to talk about. Do you want to eat more? Yi Wanwan shook her head repeatedly. No, I'm almost dying of fullness at night. This is true. In her previous life, she fell ill, her health deteriorated, and her appetite also became worse. Sometimes she even had to rely on nutritional injections to hold on. So when she lived a new life, her body was still healthy, and she ate such delicious food without even feeling uncomfortable, so she couldn't help but eat more. Then I'll go upstairs first. After saying that, Wanwan didn't give Shinyi any chance to speak, turned around and ran upstairs. Shinyi couldn't say the words that were on the tip of his tongue, and watched Wanwan run away from him. She was wearing slippers and a green long skirt that just reached her calves. At this moment, she ran in a panic, as if she was running away. Shinyi couldn't help but frown and fled. Is she hiding from me? What happened and why was she hiding from me? Shinyi was already tired, and now he was still wondering whether Wanwan was avoiding him, which made him lose his appetite even more. He ate a few bites casually and got up to go back to the bedroom. When Shinyi returned to the bedroom, he did not see Wanwan in the bedroom. Hearing the sound of running water in the bathroom, he realized that Wanwan was taking a shower. He rubbed his temples tiredly and went to lie down on the bed. Shinyi was still thinking about why his little wife started avoiding him after he came back from a business trip. I thought about it over and over again but couldn't figure it out, so I finally decided to wait for her to come out of the shower and then ask her directly. After Wanwan took a shower, she applied body lotion and blew her hair in the bathroom. After she had gone through all this, an hour had passed. When Wanwan came out of the bathroom, she saw Shinyi lying on the bed. She paused in her tracks and felt a little panicked. Chapter 16 Sleeping Together. She slept in the same bed with Shinyi the night she was reborn, but she was in a daze that day and had no extra energy to think about those things. The next day, Shinyi went on a business trip again, and she naturally felt relieved. But now Shinyi is back from his business trip. As a newlywed wife who loves Shinyi very much, she would definitely be suspected if she didn't sleep with Shinyi. But after all, she has had a big change in her mentality. Wanwan feels that if she were to lie on the same bed with Shinyi now, she would feel awkward no matter how she thinks about it. Wanwan hesitated for a long time, but she had to face it in the end. She could only force herself to walk towards Shinyi cautiously. When she reached the bed, she found that Shinyi seemed to have fallen asleep. Listening to his even breathing, Wanwan looked at him in a daze. Suddenly, Shinyi frowned, as if he was about to wake up. Wanwan was so scared that she shuddered and quickly looked away from Shinyi's eyes. Shinyi saw Wanwan beside the bed in a daze, then reached out and grabbed Wanwan's hand and pulled hard. He easily pulled Wanwan down on the bed and stretched out his arms to hold her in his arms. Shinyi! Wanwan's heart beat faster, she was a little panicked, and her whole body was tense. Shinyi moved forward in a daze, and seemed to kiss Wanwan on the forehead, but it also seemed like it was an accidental touch. Go to sleep. Shinyi said softly, and then continued to sleep. Wanwan wanted to struggle, but it was obvious that Shinyi was really sleepy, but it was not easy for her to just push him away. Seeing that the light was still on in the bedroom, Wanwan said softly, "The light is not turned off." Without even opening his eyes, Shinyi turned over and raised his hand to turn off the light in the bedroom, then turned around and hugged Wanwan in his arms. Such skillful movements seemed to have been repeated many times. Wanwan could only lean on Shinyi's arms very awkwardly. She couldn't help but think that she would still have to sleep with Shinyi in the future, and even be more intimate. She couldn't help blushing at the thought. Was she rejecting it or accepting it? It seemed a little unreasonable to refuse. She and Shinyi had been married for a month, and they had done everything they should and shouldn't have done on their wedding night. But if she accepted it, considering her current feelings towards Shinyi, it would seem a little strange. I was just daydreaming and I don't know when I fell asleep. The next day. It was still early when Shinyi woke up. When he opened his eyes, he saw Wanwan sleeping soundly in his arms. Shinyi thought about what happened last night. He originally wanted to wait for Wanwan to come out of the shower and then have a chat with her, but he was too tired and fell asleep without realizing it. Looking at her sleeping now, she no longer has the mischievousness she had during the day, but is very well behaved. Clever? Shinyi couldn't help but find it a little funny. How was she obedient? Clearly not obedient at all. He actually started hiding from me. Shinyi was a little emotional, but he still lowered his head slightly, kissed Wanwan gently on the forehead, and then tiptoed down from the bed. When Wanwan woke up, it was already past 9 o'clock. She was the only one left on the huge bed. The quiet bedroom indicated that Shinyi was no longer there. Chapter 17 The Beginning of the Nightmare. Wanwan was in a daze for a while before she got up from the bed and went to the bathroom to wash up reluctantly. By the time she finished washing up and went downstairs, Shinyi had already left home and went to the company. While eating breakfast, Wanwan was thinking that since Shinyi was back, she had to take some time to discuss her work plans with him. She didn't have a job after graduation, and because of an arranged marriage, she married Shinyi 1 year after graduating from college. In their circle, after marriage, the woman is basically assumed to be a full-time housewife. Although she didn't even know what she wanted to do, in order to avoid unnecessary trouble, she still notified Shinyi before working. No, she should discuss it with him first. Wanwan had nothing to do the whole day. Shinyi did not come home for dinner in the evening. Wanwan ate by herself, took a walk in the garden, and then went back to the bedroom to take a shower. Wanwan filled the bathtub with water and took a comfortable bath. After she came out, she sat in front of the dressing table and started to take care of her skin. Finally, everything was cleaned up. Wanwan looked at the clock in the bedroom. It was already past 10 o'clock, but Shinyi had not come back yet. She couldn't help but frown. I couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in my heart. Then I couldn't help but wonder why Shinyi hadn't come back so late. Where is he? What is he doing? Is there another woman around? The groundless suspicions surged up bit by bit, quickly devouring her sanity and pulling her deeper and deeper into the quagmire. With a click, Wanwan suddenly came back to her senses and looked down at the mobile phone that fell beside the bed. After staring at it blankly for 2 seconds, something in her mind suddenly broke. Wanwan's eyes suddenly turned red and she began to breathe heavily. Almost there. She was just a little bit away from falling into that horrible abyss again, just like in her previous life. Wanwan kept breathing hard to calm herself down. I kept telling myself in my heart that everything had started over again, and the mistakes I made in my previous life would never happen again, never happen again. After a long time, Wanwan finally bent down and picked up the phone. Then she lay on the bed, covered herself with the quilt, and didn't even think about waiting for Shinyi to come back. She couldn't care less about work or not. The only thing she had to do was to not let herself fall into that terrible mood again. This is the beginning of the nightmare. Wanwan closed her eyes and forced herself to rest early. Wanwan fell asleep, but her sleep was not serene. She dreamed of many things that happened in her previous life. She watched herself sink into a state of self-doubt and then turn into a hysterical lunatic. She gradually drifted away from her friends, and her relationship with Shinyi became worse and worse. Even Zhouzhou tried to avoid her. Even her parents, who loved her very much, died in the car accident because of her. No, don't. Wanwan couldn't help but murmured. Wanwan struggled hard, trying to get rid of it all. Then she fell into another dream. She dreamed that she was reborn and everything started all over again. She already knew she was wrong, she already knew she had done something wrong. She will change, she shouldn't be so stubborn. I just hope that the tragedy of my previous life will not happen again. Chapter 18, Desperate Eyes. But for some reason, even though she had been reborn, nothing had changed. She still loved Shinyi so obsessively, and finally turned into an irrational lunatic. In the end, her parents were gone, Shinyi no longer loved her, Zhouzhou no longer loved her, and all her friends left her. She became a poor creature with no one loving her. They all left, leaving her alone. Finally, she died alone on that rainy night, without even seeing Shinyi and Zhouzhou for the last time. No, I don't want it. Wanwan shook her head and started crying helplessly. Why? Why did it turn out like this? Wanwan, Wanwan. The man's voice was calm but a little anxious. Wanwan suddenly opened her eyes and gasped for breath. At this moment, she was still immersed in her own dream and unable to struggle. Looking at the man in front of her, she was in a daze for a moment and couldn't tell whether it was a dream or reality. What's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? Shinyi asked worriedly as he sat on the edge of the bed. Just now, Wanwan looked as if she had dreamed of something very terrifying and was extremely scared. Hearing the familiar voice, Wanwan seemed to come back to her senses. At this moment, she felt her heart aching badly. Tears couldn't help but fall from her eyes, instantly blurring her vision. What did you dream about? Why are you so scared? Shinyi was a little at a loss, especially when he saw the look Wanwan gave him just now. Her tear-filled eyes were filled with despair. At that moment, Shinyi felt a little scared for the first time in his life, as if he was infected by Wanwan's desperate eyes. Shinyi was always calm and composed when faced with something. Even if he was at a loss for a moment, he quickly recovered. He sat by the bed, holding Yi Wanwan with both hands and whispered, "Don't be afraid no matter what you dreamed about. It's just a dream." Shinyi's voice was right beside her ears, and Yi Wanwan felt as if all the strength in her body had been drained away. She thought that since she was reborn, she could easily change the past and break free from the tragedy of her previous life. But when I really faced it, I found that it was not that simple. Her stubbornness is real, her mental illness is real, but her love is also real. Even if she were to live again, it would be extremely difficult for her to change the tragic ending of her previous life. If she made the slightest mistake, she would probably end up like in her previous life. Seeing that Yi Wanwan didn't say anything, Shinyi could only lower his voice and comfort her, "It's okay." He raised his hand and gently wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes with his fingertips, and said in the most gentle voice that could drive Yi Wanwan crazy, "You're like a little child, you can even be scared and cry because of a nightmare." Yi Wanwan forced herself to come back to her senses and told herself that it was just a dream. She seemed to inadvertently avoid Shinyi's hand and buried her face in the quilt. But in just a few breaths, Yi Wanwan had controlled her tears and gradually regained her composure. Shinyi was still sitting beside the bed, watching Yi Wanwan's actions. He didn't seem to know how to comfort people, so at this time he could only look at her like this. Until Yi Wanwan completely regained her composure and revealed her little face from under the quilt. Because she had just cried, Yi Wanwan's whole face was red, her eyes were swollen, and there were obvious tear marks on her face. She looked really pitiful. Chapter 19 Work. Seeing that she had stopped crying, Shinyi patiently continued to comfort her, "It's okay." "Yeah." Yi Wanwan responded vaguely. Then the two of them sat there in silence for a long time. Shinyi was about to get up and go to the bathroom to get a wet towel to wipe Yi Wanwan's face. At this moment, Yi Wanwan looked up at Shinyi and suddenly said, "Shinyi, I want to go out to work." Shinyi paused as he was about to stand up, then sat down again. He didn't speak quickly, as if he was thinking about something carefully. After several seconds, he asked, "You seem to be worried lately. Did something happen to you?" Shinyi thought he knew Yi Wanwan quite well. He had felt something was wrong since the last time she fell into the swimming pool. He also noticed that Yi Wanwan seemed to be avoiding him. And he had no idea what was causing all this. He wanted to ask yesterday, but he was too sleepy and fell asleep accidentally, so he didn't get the chance at all. Today he also thought about it carefully, and the only thing that happened recently was that Yi Wanwan attended the birthday party that day. Shinyi thought about it and thought that it was because he knew she was going there that day that he felt something was wrong. After all, she went to the birthday party that day, probably intending to cause trouble. He didn't even know the name of that woman who came out of nowhere, but she insisted on getting involved with him. It was his problem that as a married man he did not handle his interpersonal relationships well, but it was also her problem that the woman insisted on causing trouble for him. As his wife, it is normal for Yi Wanwan to feel uncomfortable. He didn't think Yi Wanwan's behavior that day was excessive. Instead, he asked people to investigate who pushed his wife at the banquet. However, it was not until now that he realized that Yi Wanwan's abnormality might have nothing to do with that woman, and something else must have happened. The person who pushed Yi Wanwan has not been found yet. Yi Wanwan shook her head and said in a muffled voice while sniffing, "No, I'm just too bored at home, I want to find something to do." Yi Wanwan herself is not a career-oriented person. After all, she has never worked for a moment in her previous life. She is like most girls from wealthy families. Go to school when you should, get married when you should, have children when you should, and then be an idle rich wife at home. Now that she has a new life, she is so afraid that she will repeat the tragedy of her previous life, so she must make changes. In her previous life, when she saw a psychologist, the doctor suggested that she do something that she was interested in, whether it was work or entertainment, as long as it could distract her attention from Shinyi. But at that time she had become very paranoid, focusing all her attention on Shinyi, watching Shinyi's every move all the time. Shinyi frowned slightly. Although gender equality has long been a reality in today's society, he and Yi Wanwan grew up in the same wealthy family and received the same education. Subconsciously, he felt that his wife should be a full-time housewife at home. Suddenly hearing Yi Wanwan say that she wanted to work, Shinyi didn't know how to answer for a moment. In this strange silence, Yi Wanwan seemed to have understood Shinyi's meaning. She lowered her eyes, making it impossible to tell her emotion. Chapter 20 She indirectly killed her own parents. Shinyi looked at her like that, and for some reason he felt a little sorry for her, so he blurted out, "It's already late today, and you're tired, why don't you go to bed early? Can we talk about it in detail tomorrow?" Yi Wanwan quickly raised her head and looked at Shen Yi, with a hint of surprise in her eyes. She knew Shen Yi, so she was aware that Shen Yi's words actually meant that there was room for negotiation on this matter. In fact, if she just persists a little longer, it will basically be confirmed. Thinking of this, Yi Wanwan couldn't help laughing, but she had just cried for a while, and when she suddenly laughed, she accidentally laughed out snot bubbles, and her originally excited smile froze in an instant. However, Shen Yi, looking at Yi Wanwan's silly look, couldn't help but raise the corner of his mouth and also revealed a faint smile. The next day, perhaps because of the nightmare last night, Yi Wanwan woke up before 7 in the morning. She opened her eyes groggily, and then stared blankly at the ceiling for a while. Until a click sound was heard, Yi Wanwan subconsciously looked in the direction where the sound came from. Shen Yi was seen wearing home clothes, wiping his dripping hair as he walked out of the bathroom. Yi Wanwan couldn't control her heartbeat. "Calm down, calm down, calm down." Yi Wanwan kept repeating to herself, fearing that she might have a brain seizure. "I fell in love with Shen Yi at first sight, mostly because of his face." When Yi Wanwan came back to her senses, Shen Yi had already come to her and asked calmly, "Are you awake so early?" Yi Wanwan always liked to stay in bed. Usually, she was still asleep when he went out to work, but today she was a little early. "Yeah." Yi Wanwan responded in a low voice, and then asked a little slower, "Why are you still at home?" She didn't have time to see what time it was, but she had already gotten used to not seeing Shen Yi after waking up. Shen Yi said, "Today is Saturday, it's time to go back to Repulse Bay." Repulse Bay is Yi Wanwan's parents' home. Yi Wanwan is the only daughter in the Yi family. Naturally, Yi's parents loved their daughter very much. Before they got married, they had agreed that she would go back once a week. He suddenly went on a business trip last week. He originally thought that Yi Wanwan would go back by herself, but he didn't expect that she didn't go. This morning, Yi's father called to ask about it, and there was something of a questioning tone in his words. When he learned that they were going back, Shen Yi felt that the tone of his father-in-law's speech to him became a little kinder. Yi Wanwan was stunned again. She looked at Shen Yi for a long time before nodding and responding vaguely, "Oh." It has been many days since she was reborn, but she has never taken the initiative to call Yi's father and mother, nor has she taken the initiative to go back to see them. It's not that she doesn't miss them, but that she is deliberately avoiding them. In fact, she just didn't dare to think about it, nor did she dare to see them. It was she who indirectly killed her parents. If she hadn't suddenly gone crazy, Mom and Dad wouldn't have driven over in the heavy rain, and there wouldn't have been a car accident. It was because of her that my parents died in that car accident. Now that she has a new life, she feels she has no face to see them. She has ruined too many people for her love. Shen Yi frowned slightly. He didn't know why Yi Wanwan suddenly became depressed. "Is it because you miss home?" Chapter 21 Gift. The two elders of the Yi family dote on their only daughter, and I believe Yi Wanwan also loves them very much. Shen Yi thought, that's probably it. Although he had never restricted Yi Wanwan's behavior, she was married after all, and her relationship with the Yi family was somewhat different. "If you're not sleepy, get up. We'll go back after breakfast," said Shen Yi. Yi Wanwan nodded, then got up and washed up. After a while, Yi Wanwan came out of the bathroom after washing her face, and Shen Yi also came out of the cloakroom with a small gift bag in his hand. Shen Yi walked up to Yi Wanwan and handed the small bag to her. "This is for you." "What is this?" Yi Wanwan was a little confused. In fact, she recognized the brand of the gift bag. It was an international brand, but she didn't understand what Shen Yi's sudden action meant. Shen Yi explained, "I forgot to give you the gift I brought you on my business trip." Yi Wanwan had a very strange feeling in her heart. She took the bag hesitantly, and then opened it and saw that it was a lipstick. "There are 2 women in the team who asked me for an hour off after work, saying they wanted to buy lipstick. It's said to be a limited edition. If you don't hurry up and buy it, it will be gone. So I asked them to bring one for me." He actually didn't understand these things, but he thought that since it was so popular, Yi Wanwan might like it too, so he asked a colleague to help him buy one. Yi Wanwan's heart began to beat wildly uncontrollably. Shen Yi was always like this, always able to make her fall for him easily. In fact, she has an identical lipstick on her dressing table. For international brands like these, as long as you are their VIP customer, whenever new products are put on the shelves, they will send the new products to the customer for selection first. But Xinyi didn't know all this. He just happened to hear his colleague talking about it when he was on a business trip, and then he brought a copy for her as well. How could Yi Wanwan not be moved by his actions? Thank you. Yi Wanwan felt a little choked up in her throat and her smile seemed forced. The two had breakfast at home, packed up simply and set off for Repulse Bay. Yi Wanwan was absent-minded along their way and never spoke a word. The atmosphere in the car became inexplicably weird. Xinyi has never been a talkative person. Sometimes he would feel annoyed when he heard someone talking about irrelevant things all the time, and he didn't understand why there was so much nonsense to say. But Yi Wanwan was just the opposite of him, and he knew it from the first time he met Yi Wanwan. When she is with people she is close to, she can talk about all sorts of things, as if she has endless things to say. Before, whenever the two of them were together, Yi Wanwan would find all kinds of topics to talk to him. Although he didn't know what to answer most of the time, he would still listen patiently. At this moment, he couldn't hear Yi Wanwan's chattering in his ear. He just felt uncomfortable and even felt a little uncomfortable. Xinyi couldn't help but think that his little wife seemed to have really become a little different since she fell into the swimming pool. It was hard to explain the feeling. Yi Wanwan was still the Yi Wanwan he was familiar with, but sometimes, for a moment, he felt that his wife was no longer his wife. What on earth is going on? Chapter 22, Yi's Pretending Father. Xinyi still couldn't figure out what happened at the birthday party that day. Why did Yi Wanwan become a little strange after that day? After entering Repulse Bay, the vehicle quickly arrived at the Yi family villa. When Yi's mother Su Xiangyi received the notification from the community security guard, she was already waiting at the door of her villa. When Su Xiangyi saw a car coming, a look of joy appeared on her face and she waved excitedly to the people in the car. When Yi Wanwan saw her mother, all her original anxious emotions miraculously disappeared at this moment. There is only the joy of reunion. Yi Wanwan's eyes were slightly red, and she waved to Su Xiangyi. After Xinyi parked the car, Yi Wanwan immediately opened the door, got out and ran towards Su Xiangyi, throwing herself into Su Xiangyi's arms, holding back her tears, and acting like a child. Mom. Su Xiangyi couldn't help but shed tears as she held her precious daughter in her arms, but she was still scolding Yi Wanwan, "You're already married, why are you still so noisy?" HMPH. Yi Wanwan let out a proud sound, hugged Su Xiangyi and said coquettishly, "After getting married, am I no longer your precious daughter?" Su Xiangyi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "You will always be our family's treasure." Yi Wanwan hugged Su Xiangyi and rubbed her again, she was so well behaved. Until Xinyi parked the car, took out a gift from the trunk, walked up to her with the gift in his hand, and called out respectfully, "Mom." Su Xiangyi smiled at Xinyi, then gently pushed Yi Wanwan, "Okay, go in quickly, your dad is still waiting, don't stand at the door all the time." Yi Wanwan reluctantly let go of Su Xiangyi. Looking at the still healthy Su Xiangyi in front of her, Yi Wanwan could no longer control herself. But she also knew that she couldn't behave too abnormally, as it would let her parents notice something was wrong. The servant nearby quickly stepped forward and took the gift brought by Xinyi, and then the group returned to the villa. In the living room, Yi Zhenhua was sitting on the sofa, reading a newspaper seriously. When he heard the noise outside, he just raised his eyes slightly and said in a light tone, "You're back." Su Xiangyi glanced at her husband who was pretending to be calm, and reached out to grab the newspaper. Yi Zhenhua, who had the newspaper taken away, frowned and looked at his wife, asking with some displeasure, "What are you doing? Stop pretending here. When Wanwan wasn't back, you asked me every day when she would be back. Today you even called me to ask. Now that Wanwan is back, why are you pretending here again?" Su Xiangyi complained bluntly. Her daughter did not come home last week. Although Su Xiangyi missed her daughter very much, she still stopped Yi Zhenhua from calling, and Yi Zhenhua gave up. As a result, he called Xinyi early this morning, and his tone of voice was questioning, as if Xinyi dared to say that he would not come back, Yi Zhenhua would crawl along the phone line and beat Xinyi up. Su Xiangyi was speechless. They were a newlywed couple and were spending the best time being affectionate with each other, but Yi Zhenhua, as a father, was so ignorant that he insisted on disturbing them. Su Xiangyi just can't stand the way he's pretending to be here. Yi Zhenhua glanced at Xinyi who was silent beside him, and felt that he was being laughed at. I suddenly felt extremely embarrassed and wanted to say something in rebuttal, but I didn't dare to say it even when the words were on the tip of my tongue. In the end, I could only cough twice to cover it up. Chapter 23 Birth. Dad, I miss you too. Yi Wanwan said as she sat down next to her father, holding his arm and swaying. In Yi Wanwan's eyes, Yi Jinhua has never been a strict father. In the past, she often acted like a spoiled child to Yi's father in order to achieve her own small requests. Father Yi glanced at her, seemed a little dissatisfied, and snorted, "I can't tell. If you really miss them, why don't you come back to visit more often?" Yi Wanwan stuck out her tongue, looking playful. "Don't worry about your dad." Su Xiangyi went over and pulled Yi Wanwan, letting her sit next to her, and then she chattered about some unimportant things. Yi Jinhua and Shen Yi were unable to get a word in. In order to avoid an awkward atmosphere, Yi Jinhua acted like an elder and asked first, "How's your work going recently?" Shen Yi replied, "Everything went well." Yi Jinhua nodded. Deep down, he was very satisfied with his son-in-law, but no matter how satisfied he was, Yi Jinhua could not show it. Then Yi Jinhua continued to ask, "Has Wanwan caused you any trouble recently? She is spoiled by her mother at home, and she likes to make a fuss whenever she is not satisfied. If she does anything wrong, just teach her a lesson. If she still doesn't listen, then tell me and I'll teach her a lesson." Although Yi Jinhua was saying that Yi Wanwan had a bad temper, he did not seem to be apologizing at all. Instead, it seemed more like he was testing whether Shen Yi had any dissatisfaction with Yi Wanwan. Shen Yi understood and replied, "No, Wanwan is fine." As for his wife Yi Wanwan, Shen Yi does not think there is anything wrong with her for now. She may be a little willful occasionally, which makes Shen Yi, who has always been well behaved, feel that his boring life has become more interesting. It's just that something seems to be wrong with his wife recently, especially yesterday when she had a nightmare and then brought up the idea of working. Thinking of this, Shen Yi subconsciously turned his head to glance at Yi Wanwan who was sitting next to him. Yi Wanwan seemed to be chatting about something very interesting with Su Xiangyi. She always had a sweet smile on her face, looking pretty and adorable. Until Su Xiangyi suddenly changed the subject. "Dudu will be 1 year old in 2 days, you should also give birth to a child quickly so that I can hold my grandson quickly." "Mom!" Yi Wanwan was stunned when she suddenly said this. Her face turned red and she couldn't help but raise her voice. Although Shen Yi didn't know who Dudu was, he knew that his mother-in-law was trying to urge him to have a baby. Although he was already married, Shen Yi still felt a little uncomfortable when some things were put on the table. Shen Yi is not opposed to having children. In his opinion, one should start a family and build a career at the right age. But he has received a good education over the years, and he doesn't have too many requirements about whether to have a boy or a girl, or how many children to have. He can only let nature take its course. Su Xiangyi saw Yi Wanwan's look and knew that she was shy. Su Xiangyi said disapprovingly, "You are young now, so take advantage of the time to recover from having a baby now. Look at your cousin. She was busy having fun when she was young and didn't have a child until she was 30. How many years has it been? Because I gave birth too late, my body didn't recover well, and now I look like I'm almost 40. Chapter 24. Let's talk. Her husband disliked her yellow-faced wife and raised a little girl outside. Now the family is in chaos. I don't even want to talk about it. And now we can lend a hand, won't it be easier for you?" Su Xiangyi spoke earnestly. She also had her own considerations on this matter. In a wealthy family like theirs, there were always cases where the mother gained status through her son. There was a reason for that. They are very satisfied with Shen Yi's current performance, but it is unpredictable what will happen in the future. Having a child early will also be a guarantee for Wanwan. In addition, she really felt that Yi Wanwan was young and could recover easily, and the adults from both families could help take care of the child, which would be easier than for Wanwan to take care of the child by herself in the future. Seeing that Yi Wanwan lowered her head and didn't speak, obviously not wanting to talk about this matter, Su Xiangyi poked her forehead in disappointment. Yi Wanwan snorted proudly and ignored her mother. In short, Yi Wanwan just dealt with this matter perfunctorily. Yi Wanwan and Shen Yi stayed until after dinner before leaving. After getting in the car, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. She sat in the passenger seat, her whole body slumped in the seat as if she had no bones, staring blankly at the front. No one knew what she was thinking. It was obvious that she was numb from today's talk of urging her to give birth. Shen Yi was driving silently. He was not a talkative person and was not good at finding topics on his own, so he was driving quietly without saying a word, just glancing at Yi Wanwan beside him from time to time. After returning to the villa, Yi Wanwan dragged her tired body upstairs, and then prepared to take a shower and go to bed early. Shinyi followed behind her all the time, and when he saw her getting ready to take a shower, he couldn't help but say, "Wan. What's wrong?" Yi Wanwan stopped and turned back to glance at Shinyi. "Let's talk." Shinyi is not a person who likes to drag things out. Whether it is work or family, as long as there is a problem, he wants to solve it as soon as possible. He noticed Yi Wanwan's abnormal behavior during this period. Since he couldn't figure it out, he might as well just speak out. Sensing the seriousness in Shinyi's words, Yi Wanwan threw away her tiredness and nodded seriously, "Yeah." The two of them returned to the bedroom together. There was a small sofa in their bedroom. They each occupied one side of the sofa, feeling as if they were negotiating. Shinyi sat down, considered his words first, and then asked, "Why do you suddenly want to work? You seem a little strange recently. You seem to be avoiding me. What happened?" Shinyi thought, no matter what the matter was, as long as Yi Wanwan was willing to tell him, he would help her. Yi Wanwan bit her lip and pinched her arms unconsciously. Was she going to tell Shinyi that she was reborn? She didn't dare to have too much contact with him. First, she was afraid that if she had too much contact with him, he would become as crazy as he was in his previous life and want to control Shinyi's every move. Second, she was afraid that she would accidentally reveal too many flaws, which would be more troublesome to explain later. Yi Wanwan bit her lip and thought for a long time before she stammered, "I'm not avoiding you, I just feel a little embarrassed. You know why I went to Shu Lian's birthday party that day?" Yi Wanwan said while looking at Shinyi carefully. Chapter 25 I don't know that woman. This was not a reason that Yi Wanwan made up casually. Yi Wanwan really felt embarrassed about going to Shu Lian's birthday party to find the so-called mistress. Especially when she saw Shinyi, she thought of all the stupid things she had done in her previous life. Shinyi explained to Yi Wanwan very seriously, "I don't know that woman. If you must say there is a relationship, then I have met her. But as a married person, I still had these scandals. I didn't handle it well. I promise that there will be no such thing again." "I believe you," Yi Wanwan said quickly. Shinyi is too upright and he would not do that kind of thing. But as soon as she finished saying this, she was stunned. She could now say, "I believe you," without hesitation, so why was she unwilling to accept Shinyi's explanations again and again in her previous life? Seeing Yi Wanwan suddenly stunned, Shinyi was a little confused. "What's wrong?" "No, nothing." Yi Wanwan shook her head, but felt a little numb in her heart. "Then why do you suddenly want to work?" Shinyi continued to ask. "You're so busy at work, and I'm alone at home every day. It's a bit too boring." Yi Wanwan bit the corner of her lip, looking so aggrieved. Shinyi was silent, thinking carefully about the time they had been married. Indeed, he went out early and came back late every day, and he had little time to even have dinner with her. Shinyi felt that he spent too little time with his wife. But for a moment he didn't seem to think that there was anything wrong with his behavior. After all, in the environment he was in, it seemed that most of the men were working hard outside, while their wives were idle at home. He would make appointments with a few rich ladies to go shopping and have afternoon tea together. But Shinyi thought again, his wife was brought up in the Yi family and was pampered in every way, so she might not be so considerate at times. Since he was her husband, he should be more tolerant. Moreover, they didn't even go on a honeymoon after their marriage, so it was normal for Yi Wanwan to feel a little emotional. Thinking of this, Shinyi said, "I know I have too little time to spend with you recently. After I finish this week, I will be able to spare some time next month." Yi Wanwan only listened to the beginning and knew what Shinyi was going to say next. Yi Wanwan was a little anxious and said quickly, "It's mainly because I think I am an independent individual. Even if I get married, I should have my own things to do. Have I worked so hard to study for so many years, only to get married and become a full-time housewife doing nothing at home?" Yi Wanwan was afraid that Shinyi would stop her, so her tone was inevitably sharp when she spoke. After she finished her 2 sentences quickly, Shinyi was unable to react for a moment and stared at Yi Wanwan without blinking. Before marriage, he had indeed never discussed matters after marriage with his father-in-law, mother-in-law and Yi Wanwan. Everyone seemed to have tacitly agreed that Yi Wanwan's life after marriage would be to be a rich wife at home who did not have to do anything. He knew that some full-time housewives had a hard life nowadays, but with the family backgrounds of the Yi and Shin families, Yi Wanwan, a full-time housewife, really didn't need to do anything. The only thing that worries her is which store to go shopping today and whether she can catch her favorite fashion week tomorrow. Chapter 26. I don't need your apology. He didn't expect that his young wife was actually a very thoughtful person. Although most women in Shenyi's circle of friends become full-time housewives after marriage. But his wife, who had been brought up in pampered status, would never cook for him even if she was idle at home. Thinking of this, Shenyi felt that if Wanwan wanted to go out to work, then she could go out to work, and there didn't seem to be any problem with that. As for his reaction when he first heard her say that she wanted to go out to work, it can only be said that he had a slightly old-fashioned way of thinking and was unable to react for a while. Shenyi had figured this matter out in such a short time, but his silence made Wanwan feel that he was rejecting her. For a moment, Wanwan felt an unknown irritation in her heart, making it difficult for her to control herself. Wanwan couldn't help but think of her past life, especially the day she died, when she left alone in an empty bedroom. Wanwan's eyes turned red with grievance and her breathing became rapid. Shenyi almost immediately noticed that something was wrong with Wanwan, but he just thought that Wanwan felt wronged because he had not spoken for a long time and that he was unwilling to let her go out to work. Don't worry, I didn't say you can't go out to work. If you want to work, go ahead. I won't stop you. Looking at Wanwan's red eyes, Shenyi became a little flustered and couldn't help but speak faster. Shenyi thought that with him around, no matter what Wanwan wanted to do, it would go smoothly and she wouldn't have to work too hard. Wanwan was feeling annoyed at the moment, and when she suddenly heard Shenyi's words, she had no place to vent her anger. She wanted to calm down, but she couldn't. She looked at Shenyi with red eyes and rapid breathing, and for a moment she was at a loss. After looking for a while, Wanwan suddenly stood up and rushed into the cloakroom angrily. Shenyi watched Wanwan rush into the cloakroom, then heard a slight noise coming from inside, and soon saw Wanwan coming out with a set of pajamas. Shenyi subconsciously wanted to call Wanwan, but before he could say anything, Wanwan had already passed by him, quickly went to the bathroom, and then closed the door with a bang. Shenyi was still sitting on the sofa, but his brows were furrowed and he looked confused. Didn't he already agree to let her go to work? Why is she still angry? Shenyi couldn't figure it out. Even when Wanwan came out of the shower, she was still sulking with an expressionless face. She quickly applied skin care products on herself and then lay down on the bed. Last night I was still wondering if it was inappropriate for me to lie in the same bed with Shenyi, but today I completely forgot about the embarrassment and was only concerned with being angry. When Shenyi finished taking a shower and lay down on the bed, he turned sideways to hug Wanwan who had her back facing him, but Wanwan pushed him away and refused to let him touch her at all. Shenyi felt a little helpless, but he still reached out and hugged Wanwan again. Wanwan wanted to struggle, but Shenyi did not let go. He rubbed his chin against the top of her head and said softly, "Okay, I'm sorry, please don't be angry, okay? I don't want your apology," Wanwan said coldly. Shenyi was not angry either, and continued, "Yes, you don't want my apology, but I made you angry, so I must apologize." Chapter 27. Dangerous Posture. HMPH. Wanwan snorted coldly and ignored Shenyi. Shenyi lowered his head again, leaned close to the back of Wanwan's neck, and called out softly, "Wanwan." The hot breath sprayed on the back of Wanwan's neck, making her shiver all over. However, before she could react, Shenyi's kiss had already landed behind her ear. "Shenyi!" Wanwan subconsciously curled up her body and shouted excitedly. Wanwan was so angry just now that she realized how dangerous the intimate posture of her and Shenyi hugging each other was. It's obviously too late to realize it now. The next day, when Wanwan woke up, she was still in a daze. She stared at the ceiling for a long time. Her glasses gradually focused, but her cheeks quickly turned red. I don't know what he was thinking about. He was so ashamed and angry that he pulled the quilt to cover himself tightly, and then waved around under the quilt. After just 2 moves, Wanwan froze and couldn't help shouting, "It hurts, it hurts." It took a long time for them to calm down. Wanwan let out a long sigh and felt unwell. What should I do? I really want to give up and hide somewhere where no one is. Wanwan lay on the bed, unwilling to move. The bedroom was very quiet. She heard the sound of the door opening very clearly. She shrank her feet under the quilt, then continued to pretend to sleep without moving. In fact, when Shenyi opened the door and came in, he happened to see Wanwan's white foot retracted, and it was obvious that she had woken up. Shenyi went to the bed, looked at the bulge in the quilt, and said softly, "It's almost 10 o'clock, get up." Wanwan pretended to be dead without moving. Seeing that she was unmoved, Shen remained silent for 2 seconds and continued, if you don't go out now, you may not be able to make it back to Banshanyanjing for lunch. Upon hearing this, Wanwan, who was pretending to be dead, suddenly threw back the quilt and looked at Shen with resentful eyes. Shen parents, who are also Wanwan's parents-in-law, live in Banshanyanjing. Before their marriage, they agreed that if they were not busy, they would go back to Wanwan's parents on Saturday and visit Shen's parents on Sunday. Shen's father, Shen Yunan, is a decisive man. Except for being kind in front of his wife, he is very serious in front of other people. In particular, Wanwan had witnessed the scene where Shen's father scolded Shen, so every time she met Shen's father afterwards, Wanwan would behave well. Shen couldn't help but smile. He sat down beside the bed, then reached out and picked up Wanwan. Wanwan felt a little uncomfortable with Shen's intimate actions and struggled a few times in his arms, let go. Afraid that he had really angered this delicate little thing, Shen loosened his grip and allowed her to struggle out of his arms as she wished. It's getting late, let's get up first. Shen said. Wanwan ignored him, but still got out of bed obediently, and went to the bathroom to wash up despite the pain all over her body. After washing up, he went downstairs to have breakfast, and then went out to Banshanyanjing. When they arrived at Banshanyanjing, they found that there were guests at home today. Because they were female guests, only Linshu was in the living room to greet them. Seeing Shen and Wanwan coming in, Linshu said with a smile, "You're back." Chapter 28, What did you see that you shouldn't have seen? Mom. Shen and Wanwan shouted one after another. Linshu smiled and said, I was just talking to Xiao Ran about you guys, and you're here now. The Xiao Ran that Linshu mentioned is the middle-aged woman sitting next to her at this moment, and she is her friend of many years. Shen naturally recognized her. He bowed slightly and called out politely, Aunt He. This must be Wanwan. She looks so beautiful and lively. It's a pity that I couldn't make it to your wedding. He Xiao Ran said with some regret. Wanwan asked and quickly called out, Aunt He. Originally, Wanwan also knew her mother-in-law's best friend, but that was in her previous life after all. Today was the first time she met Aunt He in this life. Wanwan, come and sit down. Linshu waved her hand, motioning for Wanwan to sit next to her, and then said to Shen, your father is in the study upstairs, you can go up by yourself. Shen nodded, and when he turned around, he reached out and patted Wanwan on the head, as if telling her not to be nervous. Wanwan pouted in dissatisfaction, her hair was messed up by him, but Shen smiled with the corner of his mouth slightly raised, then went upstairs to the study room. He Xiao Ran and Linshu watched the little movements between Shen and Wanwan, looked at each other, and smiled knowingly. Don't stand, sit down quickly. He Xiao Ran also stretched out her hand to motion Wanwan to come over. Wanwan didn't hesitate any more and walked over and sat down between He Xiao Ran and Linshu. Afterwards, He Xiao Ran and Linshu continued chatting, and Wanwan occasionally joined in with a few words. But Wanwan was a little distracted, because there were not just three of them sitting here. There was clearly a young woman sitting next to He Xiao Ran. But no one mentioned her from beginning to end, and the woman never said a word, as if she didn't exist at all. The woman was wearing a blue dress and had long wavy chestnut hair. She lowered her head slightly, and her hair fell down to cover her face. She exuded a strange aura from her whole body. Everyone ignored her existence. Was she the only one who could see that woman? In Wanwan's heart, her mother-in-law Linshu is a very cultured woman. Even if she doesn't like someone, since she has come to her home, she can't ignore her like this. That would be too rude. In addition, Wanwan herself was a reborn person, and she couldn't help but start to have wild thoughts in her heart. Did she see something she shouldn't have seen? Wanwan was absorbed in thinking, and when the woman suddenly looked sideways at Wanwan, she was startled. She was sitting between He Xiao Ran and Linshu, very close to them. Naturally, He Xiao Ran and Linshu noticed her sudden shiver. The smile on Linshu's face froze for a moment. He held Wanwan's cold hand and patted it gently, saying in a light tone, That's your aunt, his niece, He Qingyun. He Xiao Ran's smile widened a little. I was so busy chatting that I forgot to introduce her to Wanwan. This is my niece, He Qingyun. Hello, Miss He. Wanwan greeted her perfunctorily. Her heart was still beating, thump thump. It turned out that she was not the only one who could see it, and it was not a dirty thing. But why did she look so scary just now? It's so sinister, as if it wants to eat me. Chapter 29 I confessed to him. Although it was obviously not a dirty thing, Yi Wanwan was still scared and got goosebumps all over her body. Fortunately, we didn't chat for long before the servant came over to remind us that it was time to eat. Shen Yunan and Shen Yi also came down from upstairs, and Yi Wanwan quickly called out, "Dad." "Yeah." Shen Yunan nodded, looking at his daughter-in-law who looked a little restrained, and seemed to be hesitant to speak. His wife told him several times that his daughter-in-law was a little girl and he should not always have a stern face when talking to her as it would scare her. But Shen Yunan really couldn't put on any friendly expression, so he finally thought about it and gave up. Shen Yunan went over, and Shen Yi came to Yi Wanwan and said with a smile, "Why are you so timid?" "No." Yi Wanwan subconsciously leaned closer to Shen Yi again, feeling wronged. She was not a coward today, she was just scared by that person named He Qingyun. "What's wrong?" Shen Yi looked at her actions with some confusion. Yi Wanwan glanced not far away. At this moment, everyone was walking towards the restaurant, only she and Shen Yi were left behind. Yi Wanwan reached out and tugged at the hem of Shen Yi's clothes. Shen Yi naturally bent down and put his ear close to Yi Wanwan, then he heard Yi Wanwan lower her voice and ask him, "Do you know Aunt his niece? The one next to Aunt He. What's wrong with her?" Shen Yi was puzzled. Yi Wanwan couldn't help but shudder whenever she thought of the look she gave her before. "She just gave me a look that seemed to want to eat me alive. It's as if there is some deep hatred between us, but I don't know her. Not to mention that she didn't know her in this life, she didn't know her in her previous life even after living for so many years." Shen Yi was silent for a moment. He didn't know whether he should tell Yi Wanwan. His mother, Ms. Lin Shu, and auntie were classmates in high school, and they had a good relationship. Over the years, the He family has received a lot of conveniences in their home because of Aunt He. Half a year ago, the He family was still planning to have him marry He Qingyun. But he refused. Yi Wanwan was still puzzled and said, "And Mom and Auntie are so strange, don't they like Miss He? But if they don't like her, why did Auntie bring her home? Auntie is not the He family's biological child, so she has always been grateful to the He family for taking her in, so sometimes she can't refuse people from the He family." Shen Yi is not a gossipy person, but He Xiaoran and Ms. Lin are good friends, so he knows something about it. "As for whether He Qingyun has a grudge against you, I think I have to blame for this." Shen Yi felt inexplicably guilty when he said this. "What does it have to do with you?" Yi Wanwan tilted her head and looked at Shen Yi curiously and asked. "Ahem." Shen Yi coughed slightly to cover up his inner embarrassment, and then told the truth. "The He family wanted to arrange a marriage for me before, but I rejected it. Later, He Qingyun also confessed to me, but I also rejected it. How come I didn't know?" Yi Wanwan widened her eyes, her face full of shock. "I? Why are you two still standing there? Come over and have your meal." Just as Shen Yi was about to explain, he heard Ms. Lin Shu calling them in the restaurant. Chapter 30. I volunteered. "Let's go and eat first." Shen Yi didn't say anything else. He took Yi Wanwan's hand and walked into the restaurant. The panic that Yi Wanwan had felt when frightened by He Qingyun's terrifying eyes had mostly faded away, and was replaced by full curiosity. But it was time for dinner, so Yi Wanwan controlled her gossiping mind and didn't ask any further questions. During the meal, because He Qingyun was sitting right opposite Yi Wanwan could see He Qingyun just by looking up. However, He Qingyun seemed to be unable to see Yi Wanwan and did not even glance at her. No, it should be said that she seemed to be unable to see anyone and just ate her meal quietly. It was as if she was the only one at the table. If she hadn't been so impressed by the look He Qingyun gave Yi Wanwan before, she would have doubted whether she had seen it wrong. It was not until after lunch that He Xiaoran took He Qingyun away. As soon as they left, Lin Shu frowned and said in a bad tone, "Those people in the He family are really like leeches, they must suck every drop of Xiaoran's blood. He Qingyun is so shameless. How dare she come to my house?" Logically speaking, Lin Shu is the elder and should not scold a junior so bluntly, but Lin Shu was really angry. Yi Wanwan was a little surprised. She could see how much her mother-in-law disliked Miss He. After a while, Yi Wanwan and Shen Yi also left because Lin Shu said that she was so angry that she had a headache and had to take a nap first. Shen Yi then offered to take Yi Wanwan back first. Originally, Lin Shu wanted to keep them for dinner, but considering that Shen Yi was busy with work, it would be better not to take up their time on the weekend and let the newlyweds enjoy some time alone. On their way back, Yi Wanwan was so excited that she couldn't help but gossip about He Qingyun. "What's going on with He Qingyun?" "Nothing. The He family just wants to use Aunt He to build a relationship with our family. But they have big ambitions. They also want to marry He Qingyun into the family. You've seen today how much Mom hates her. How could she let He Qingyun marry me? Shenyi didn't want to comment too much on the He family's affairs, but deep down he still felt that they were tactless. Yi Wanwan looked as if something suddenly dawned on her. Then he couldn't help but mutter, "Then Mom asked me to marry you, does that mean she likes me so much?" Yi Wanwan remembered that in her previous life, her relationship with her mother-in-law was pretty good at the beginning. But later, because of what she did, she had a very awkward argument with her mother-in-law, and at one point she didn't even want to see her. It was not until later that she started seeing a doctor and taking medicine that her mother-in-law took the initiative to visit her. With a cold face, she still told her to listen to the doctor and that she would get better. When Shenyi heard Yi Wanwan's words, he frowned slightly. "Why do you think so?" Yi Wanwan was in a trance just now. When she heard Shenyi talking, she came back to her senses subconsciously, but did not react to what he was saying. While driving, Shenyi said, "Mom is indeed very satisfied with you, but I personally nodded and agreed to marry you. Otherwise, no one can make me do anything I don't want to do, not even my parents." Whether it was taking over his father's business in the future or marrying Yi Wanwan, the premise of these things was entirely because Shenyi was willing, and it was not arranged. Chapter 31. It would be nice to spend my whole life with you. Just as Shenyi himself said, no one can make him do something he doesn't want to do. Yi Wanwan was stunned, her heart seemed to be electrocuted, and the numb feeling spread from her heart to her internal organs. "Isn't it a business marriage?" Yi Wanwan couldn't help but ask. Just as they were waiting for the traffic light to turn red, Shenyi stepped on the brakes and looked sideways at Yi Wanwan. It would be a lie to say that there is no intention of the Shen and Yi families to form a strong alliance. But Wanwan. Shenyi felt that his little wife seemed to have always misunderstood their relationship, and he needed to explain it clearly. "The main reason I married you is because I like you and I think it would be nice to spend my whole life with you, so I got married." It was true that he had not spent a long time with Yi Wanwan. At the beginning, it was the elders in his family who contacted him, but in the end, he was attracted to Yi Wanwan. He has a calm personality and doesn't even have too many emotions. He studied when he was young and later worked. His life can be described as uneventful. But one day he met a girl who was coquettish, could get angry, was considerate but also prone to getting into trouble. He watched her happy every day, and he actually felt his heart happy too. At that time, he was thinking that it would be quite interesting to marry such a person and spend the rest of his life with him. "So you really like me?" Yi Wanwan asked blankly. Shenyi looked at her confused expression, feeling somewhat amused and distressed. Was it because he did not do well that she always felt that he only chose her for business marriage? The green light came on, and Shenyi drove while using his free hand to rub Yi Wanwan's head. It was not a gentle stroke, but it messed up her hair all at once. "Fool." Yi Wanwan did not respond, but was a little dazed, as if she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She had never heard Shenyi say these words in her previous life. She always felt that she was the one who liked Shenyi first. Although Shenyi treated her very well, she just felt that she liked Shenyi more, so she always felt that Shenyi did not love her enough. But now Shenyi told her that they would get married because he loved her. The love between them may not be as unforgettable as that between other couples, but their marriage also started because of love. She had to admit that Shenyi's words had deeply touched her. The weekend was over and Shenyi started working again. Yi Wanwan slept until she woke up naturally, and then went downstairs reluctantly to have breakfast. After breakfast, I started to do nothing. After lying in the living room for a while, he got up and went upstairs to the bedroom. She had already discussed the job matter with Shenyi, so she could start looking for a job now. However, Yi Wanwan has never worked before and doesn't even have a basic resume. If she wants to find a job, she naturally has to make a resume first. Yi Wanwan took her computer and lay on the big bed in the bedroom. She first found some templates, studied them, and began to write her resume seriously. As she was writing, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but think of what Shenyi said to her yesterday, and she couldn't help but start thinking about it. It wasn't until the message alert sounded from her phone that Yi Wanwan came back to her senses. Chapter 32. Girlfriend. Don't think about it, don't think about it. Yi Wanwan clapped her cheeks with both hands and shook her head vigorously, as if this could shake off those weird thoughts. Then he continued to stare at the computer and started writing his resume. But soon, her phone began to ring with message alerts continuously, forcing her to stop. Yi Wanwan sighed helplessly, feeling as if she was going to die before accomplishing her mission. Yi Wanwan took the phone, opened WeChat and found that there were already dozens of unique messages in a small WeChat group called Beauty Base. When Yi Wanwan saw the group nickname, she was stunned for a moment and was unable to react. These are her college roommates. 4 years is enough time for them to become very good friends. However, after her rebirth, she never thought about these friends. The reason is simple. They haven't been in touch for many years in their previous life and have long become strangers. The last time they met was when she was emotionally unstable. Shenyi deliberately found them and asked them to accompany him, thinking that perhaps this would make her feel better for a while. But at that time, she was not only emotionally unstable, but she had lost her mind. Instead of feeling happy about their arrival, she became even more emotional. Just because Song Zi said, "If it really doesn't work, you should just break up," she cursed at Song Zi. She questioned Song Zi like crazy, asking her if she liked Shenyi and if she wanted to break them up. At first she was just questioning, but later she even said with certainty that Song Zi wanted to break up her and Shenyi so that she could be with Shenyi. Because Song Zi has always been single, and a long time ago Song Zi once said that she wanted to find a man as outstanding as Shenyi in the future. The farce ended with her hysteria. Since then, she has never seen Song Zi again and has lost contact with her other 2 friends. Just like that, they became strangers. Thinking of this, Yi Wanwan couldn't help but tear up. She was really outrageous in her previous life and hurt everyone around her who was good to her. During the time when Yi Wanwan was distracted, her cell phone vibrated several times and several messages in the group were refreshed. Yi Wanwan collected her thoughts and started reading the messages. "Sisters, I'm finally back. I miss you guys so much. I also brought gifts for you all. Guess which ones are yours?" Then there are more than 10 pictures, all kinds of things. Zhang Xinyu quickly replied in the group, "Why are you back so soon? Didn't you say you could only come back after the event was over?" Song Zi went with her eldest brother to their company's overseas branch in the first half of the year. She had mentioned it occasionally during previous conversations and said that she would not be able to return until after the new year at the earliest. Unexpectedly, she has suddenly returned now. Song Zi replied, "Work is going very smoothly, and there is only 1 month left before the Chinese New Year, so I came back early. I just arrived today. When are you all free to get together?" Zhang Xinyu, Xiaolu was on a business trip last week and hasn't heard that he will be back. Wanwan and I are both free. Song Zi, then let's do it tomorrow. I have to go home today. We'll have dinner together tomorrow night. When Xiaolu comes back, I'll invite her to have dinner together. Zhang Xinyu, okay. Chapter 33, Becoming a Carefree Little Girl Again. Song Zi, where's Wanwan? Are you free tomorrow? At Wanwan is a fairy. Yi Wanwan looked at their messages and felt relieved when she thought that they had not left her yet. It was great that everything was still in time. Yi Wanwan quickly replied, "Yes, if you are free, let's have dinner together tomorrow." Song Zi seemed to be very free at the moment. After seeing Yi Wanwan's reply, she started chatting with Yi Wanwan in the group. Those who were originally thinking about preparing their resumes have now forgotten about their resumes and that stinky man Shenyi, and started to scroll through the group messages. If it weren't for the fact that Song Zi had just returned today, and if she wasn't a little too excited and afraid that Song Zi would think she was weird, Yi Wanwan would definitely have asked them out directly, because she really missed her friends too much. Shenyi finished work early today, thinking of taking some time to accompany his wife. When he came back, he saw Yi Wanwan, who was smiling brightly. At this moment, she was following her aunt, helping to set the table at the dining table. Seeing him come in, she smiled and said to him, "Dinner is ready, you can eat now." Shenyi raised his eyebrows slightly. This was the first time in recent times that he heard Yi Wanwan speak to him in such a pleasant tone. It seemed like she had returned to being the carefree little girl she was at the beginning. Shenyi thought, what could make her so happy? Was her job search going smoothly? Shenyi put down his briefcase, washed his hands first, then went to the restaurant and sat down next to Yi Wanwan. Shenyi asked calmly, "You look very happy today. Is your job search going smoothly?" Yi Wanwan shook her head, still smiling, "I just submitted my resume, how can it be that fast?" After chatting in the group in the morning, Yi Wanwan prepared her resume in the afternoon and sent it to several companies. But Z is back from abroad, and we have an appointment to have dinner together tomorrow. Yi Wanwan said. So fast. Shen Yi had an impression of this person. She was the youngest daughter of the Song family and also Yi Wanwan's best friend. The Shen family and the Song family are not involved in the same field, but in the final analysis, they are all in the same circle. Song Zi's elder brother Song Zihei often meets him in the same occasions. Especially since I had heard Yi Wanwan mention it before, it left a particularly deep impression on me. Yeah. Yi Wanwan nodded while eating sweet and sour pork ribs. Her cheeks were stuffed full and she was chewing hard. Looking at Yi Wanwan's dazed look, Shen Yi felt completely relaxed. As long as everything was alright, it was good. Yi Wanwan has been in a bad mood recently. As Yi Wanwan's husband, how could he not be worried? Now seeing her smiling happily, Shen Yi almost subconsciously raised the corners of his mouth. The next day, Yi Wanwan put on makeup early, put on a beautiful dress, packed everything, and waited for the right time to go out. Yi Wanwan sat in the living room downstairs, checking her phone from time to time. For some reason, the time today seemed to be particularly long, making Yi Wanwan a little anxious. After waiting for a long time until 5 o'clock, Yi Wanwan suddenly stood up, rushed to the entrance with her small bag to change her shoes, and then left the villa without looking back. Chapter 34 Sisters Gathering. When Yi Wanwan got into the car, the driver turned around and asked, "Where are you going?" "Go to Machigan." It was a private restaurant that Song Zi's eldest brother had invested in and opened. He hadn't put too much thought into it at first, but somehow the business was getting better and better. When it was Song Zi's 20th birthday, Song Zihei gave her the private restaurant as a gift. When Yi Wanwan arrived at Chengyuan, she happened to meet Zhang Shenyu at the door. Zhang Shenyu was wearing a professional suit and carrying a big bag on her shoulder. She was walking and talking on the phone in her hand. It was obvious that she was still busy working. For a moment, I couldn't help but feel a little sad. I was very happy to see them again. Yi Wanwan sniffed hard, then raised her hand to say hello. Zhang Shenyu also waved in response, then quickly explained the work matters. When she reached Yi Wanwan, the phone had been hung up. "Mr. Zhang is really busy." Yi Wanwan returned to normal and started teasing her. Zhang Shenyu is the eldest in the dormitory. Because her family is not well off and she has 2 younger brothers and sisters who are still in school, Zhang Shenyu has been studying and working part-time since she started college. Her dream is to become a successful person as soon as possible. After graduation, she put all her attention on work. Standing next to Yi Wanwan, who had no job and spent her days eating, drinking and having fun, it was obvious that they had 2 different temperaments. They often teased Zhang Shenyu using "Mr. Zhang." Zhang Shenyu raised her hand and pinched Yi Wanwan's face, then said with a gnashing look, "That's right, you're the only one who has no worries all day. Why do you always like pinching my face?" Yi Wanwan pouted and pushed Zhang Shenyu away as if she was angry. Zhang Shenyu smiled, put her arm around Yi Wanwan's shoulders, and led her into the store. The person in charge of the store knew Yi Wanwan and the others. When he saw them come in, he immediately went up to them and greeted them. "Ms. Yi, Ms. Zhang, you are here." "Hello, Manager Chen." Zhang Shenyu greeted with a smile. She has always been like this, always able to talk and laugh with anyone. In Zhang Shenyu's words, "Who knows, maybe someone can help me someday." Manager Chen also smiled attentively, and then took them to the private room they had been using for a long time. "The boss has arrived and is waiting in the room." After bringing the person to the door of the private room, Manager Chen knocked on the door. Before Manager Chen could say anything, Song Zi's voice came from the private room, "Come in." Manager Chen didn't say anything. He opened the door for them very respectfully and stepped aside slightly to let them in. "Thank you for the trouble." Zhang Shenyu smiled and nodded slightly to Manager Chen. "If there is anything, ladies, just let me know and I will be there right away," said Manager Chen. Song Zi was on the phone at the moment, seemingly about work. When she saw Yi Wanwan and the others come in, she just waved and continued talking on the phone. Yi Wanwan and Zhang Shenyu were also very tactful and did not interrupt. The 2 of them whispered to each other about their recent situation. After about 3 to 5 minutes, Song Zi hung up the phone, threw the phone on the dining table, and then sighed, looking hopeless. "I should have studied for my master's degree. Why would I be a worker?" Chapter 35 The Yi family went bankrupt. Zhang Shenyu smiled and said, "When we were in school, You said that learning so much was useless because you would eventually have to go home and inherit the family property. Being bullied by Zhang Xinyu, Song Zi raised her hand and waved at her, as if she was going to hit Zhang Xinyu. The three of them hadn't seen each other for a long time, so now that they were sitting together, they naturally had a variety of topics to talk about. They were talking and eating at the same time, and the atmosphere was very joyful. I don't know how, but the topic of work came up. Song Zi sighed helplessly and couldn't help but sighed, alas, I feel like I'm dying of exhaustion every day now. It's like this at the beginning, but it will be fine once everything is on the right track. Zhang Xinyu comforted with her experience. Har har. Song Zi sneered twice, and when her eyes fell on Wanwan, she couldn't help but say, I really envy Wanwan now. Ever since Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi discussed work, Wanwan had no chance to speak because she had never worked before, not even an internship, so she couldn't say anything about work. But just listening to them talking, Wanwan felt happy. At this moment, Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi suddenly mentioned her, and Wanwan came back to her senses. She lowered her eyes, then looked at them a little embarrassedly and said, I also plan to find a job. The box suddenly became quiet. Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi both looked at Wanwan. At this moment, they both thought at the same time, whether they were drunk, otherwise why would they have auditory hallucinations? Wanwan was stared at by them for several seconds and felt very embarrassed. She couldn't help but cough to break the weird atmosphere at the moment. Ahem, that. Wanwan looked at their shocked expressions, as if they had heard something extraordinary, and said in a more serious tone, I'm serious, I'm really ready to work. Originally slumped in the chair with a tired look on her face, Song Zi immediately sat up straight, frowned slightly, and looked at Wanwan with worry in her eyes. What happened? Why do you suddenly want to come out to work? Is it? Song Zi was halfway through her words when she couldn't continue for a moment, fearing that her bad words had really come true. Zhang Xinyu couldn't help but watch and continued Song Zi's words. Is there something wrong with the Yi family and the Shen family? Are they going to go bankrupt? Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi looked at Wanwan, wanting to hear the answer from her. Wanwan looked at Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi, wondering what on earth they were thinking about. Seeing Wanwan didn't say anything, Song Zi hesitated and said, or I'll go back to my dad and see if I can help. Wanwan's face was filled with black lines. In their eyes, would she only come out to work when she was bankrupt and too poor to eat? What's the matter with bankruptcy? Can't I just work if I want to? Wanwan complained. Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi remained silent. It was not because they did not want to speak, but because they did not know what they should say. After all, based on their understanding of Wanwan, either the Yi family and the Shen family went bankrupt at the same time, or Wanwan was mentally ill, otherwise she would not want to work. Chapter 36, Did Shen Yi say that? In the end, it was Zhang Xinyu who calmed down first. She suppressed the smile on her face and asked seriously, what happened? Why do you suddenly want to work? It's no wonder that Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi were so surprised that Wanwan wanted to work. It's really because they have such a good relationship and know each other's situation too well. It is undeniable that Wanwan is a little girl who grew up being spoiled by her family and her life was arranged early on. Grow up carefree, then follow the arrangements of the elders at home, get married and have children, and finally live peacefully at home as a rich wife. Wanwan herself also accepted it. They had known each other for so many years, and except for Wanwan, the other sisters had all been worried about work. Only Wanwan never wanted to work. This matter of work has nothing to do with Wanwan. Wanwan was very embarrassed. It turned out that in their hearts, she was just a little waste who only knew how to eat, drink and have fun. Wanwan raised her hand and touched the back of her neck, and said with a guilty conscience, I just feel too bored being alone, so I want to find something to do. Stop trying to fool me and tell me honestly what's going on. Song Zi didn't believe Wanwan's lies and asked very seriously. It is impossible for a person to make a change without reason. Something must have happened. She knew that it was impossible for her to just casually brush it off. They had lived and eaten together for 4 years in college, and they knew her better than Shen Yi did, so she was not so easily fooled. Wanwan bit her lip, and after struggling for a while, she said, it's really not a big deal. I'm just too bored and I like to think about random things. What are you thinking about? Song Zi asked. Wanwan looked at their expressions and said carefully, for example, whether Shen Yi loves me or not, or there is another little devil trying to seduce him. I think it's because I have too much free time, so I think about these messy things. The first person Song Zi thought of was Shen Yi. She asked angrily, "Did Shen Yi say that?" No. He didn't say such a thing. Yi Wanwan quickly and vigorously shook her head like a rattle. She didn't dare let Shen Yi take the blame for this. Otherwise, with Song Zi's current expression, she was afraid that Song Zi would go to see Shen Yi with a knife. I really feel like I have too much free time, so I'm always thinking about this and that all day long. I'm afraid if I continue like this, I'll become a resentful woman in the boudoir. Yi Wanwan was almost crying while explaining, for she was afraid that Song Zi would think it was Shen Yi's fault. Perhaps it was because Yi Wanwan's expression was too sincere. Song Zi and Zhang Xinyu looked at each other, communicated their opinions with their eyes, and finally reluctantly accepted Yi Wanwan's reason. Zhang Xinyu nodded. It's good to think about working. Even if you don't achieve great success at work, at least it will make you less bored. Zhang Xinyu is a career-oriented woman. In her eyes, nothing is more important than her work. In the past, Yi Wanwan had no intention of working, and the Yi family did not need the money Yi Wanwan earned from work, so she naturally would not say much. But now that Yi Wanwan has taken the initiative to mention that he wants to work, she is also very supportive. Chapter 37. The resume is not ready yet. Since you want to work, have you discussed it with your family? Do they agree? Zhang Xinyu asked. Yes, if you act a little coquettishly with your uncle and aunt, they will agree to whatever you want to do. But what about the Shen family? Will Shen Yi agree to let you work? Song Zi also asked. After all, Yi Wanwan is already married, and is from a wealthy family like the Shen family. It should be quite difficult for Yi Wanwan to go out and work. However, Yi Wanwan nodded unexpectedly. Well, I discussed it with Shen Yi, and he agreed. Even if he disagrees, she must go out to work, Yi Wanwan thought. Agreed. Zhang Xinyu was a little surprised. She thought Shen Yi would not agree, at least not so easily. So what are your plans next? What do you want to do? Song Zi was also surprised, but she was more curious about Yi Wanwan's next plan. Yi Wanwan was a little embarrassed. I haven't decided what to do yet. Although she had made up her mind to go out to work, she really hadn't figured out what she wanted to do for the time being. And there was something about her that was embarrassing. She started preparing her resume yesterday morning, but while preparing it, she couldn't help but think of what Shen Yi had said to her, and she became absent-minded as she thought about it. Later, I chatted with Song Zi and Zhang Xinyu in the group, and forgot about preparing my resume. Agree that until now, she hadn't even prepared a resume, let alone any other plans. Song Zi and Zhang Xinyu looked at each other and began to communicate their thoughts with their eyes. Then they agreed that Yi Wanwan was really too bored and just wanted to kill time. Then do you want to find a position in your own company? Song Zi herself worked in her own company, so she subconsciously thought that Yi Wanwan would work in her own company. Yi Wanwan shook her head without hesitation. I haven't decided what to do yet, but I'm not very interested in my family's company. The Yi family got their start in real estate. Yi's father is an ambitious man, but not too ambitious. He has been focusing on real estate over the years. The Shen family is involved in a wider range of businesses, whether it is real estate, entertainment venues, or the booming internet, but she is not interested in those. Besides, her original intention was to divert attention from Shen Yi, and she went to work beside Shen Yi. Isn't that just trying to cover up one's own mistakes? It's okay. Just because you want a job doesn't mean you can find a suitable job right away. Besides, your situation is different from most people. You don't rely on a job to support yourself and you don't have any financial pressure at all, so you can choose a job that you really like. Zhang Xinyue's words were well reasoned and she completely analyzed the situation from Yi Wanwan's perspective. Yi Wanwan also nodded, agreeing with Zhang Xinyue's idea. She was not going there to make money, the main thing was that she had to be interested in it. After that, they didn't dwell on this topic anymore and talked about other things while eating. After finishing their meal, they did not rush home, but went to a music bar. The three of them continued chatting while drinking wine, as if they had endless topics to talk about as long as they were together. Chapter 38. Drunk. Yi Wanwan was in a good mood today and drank a few more glasses without realizing it. By the time she came to her senses, her head was already a little dizzy. Both Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi have entered the workplace, and drinking culture is more or less unavoidable, so they have gradually developed their drinking capacity. Looking at Yu Wanwan, who had become unresponsive, Zhang Xinyu couldn't help but shook her head and said to Song Zi beside her with a smile, "She is still a novice and a heavy addict. So cute, I really want to take her home," Song Zi said as she reached out and poked Yu Wanwan's cheek. Yu Wanwan frowned in dissatisfaction and snorted softly twice. Zhang Xinyu and Song Zi found it funny. The two who were still awake chatted for a while, and when they saw that Yu Wanwan was about to fall asleep, they prepared to leave. The two of them helped Yu Wanwan out of the bar. As soon as they stood up, Yu Wanwan's car had already arrived in front of them. But they didn't expect to see Shenyi after the car door opened. Song Zi and Zhang Xinyu looked at each other, and then Zhang Xinyu said with a smile, "Long time no see, Mr. Shen." "Ms. Zhang, Miss Song." Shenyi nodded slightly as a greeting. Looking at Yu Wanwan, who was already a little dazed leaning in Zhang Xinyu's arms, he did not show much emotion. Ever since he knew they came to the bar together, he had a premonition that Yu Wanwan would get drunk. After all, the amount of alcohol she could drink from just 2 glasses was really nothing to write home about. Shenyi got out of the car, walked to Zhang Xinyu, then took Yu Wanwan over and let her lean on his arms. Zhang Xinyu said, "I'm sorry, everyone was so happy today that I accidentally drank 2 more glasses and got a little drunk. Just have fun." Shenyi didn't think it was a big deal. She had finally gotten together with her good sisters, and she was in a good mood, so it was normal for her to drink a few more glasses. As for safety issues, the driver next to Yu Wanwan does more than just drive. "I'll leave it to Yu Wanwan then." "We'll leave first," Zhang Xinyu said. "It's already late, let's go together and let the driver take you home first." Shenyi is a very gentlemanly man. It's already so late, he can't just abandon his wife's best friend like this. "No need, my driver is here too." Song Zi quickly pointed to the car parked not far away. "Then we'll leave first. You take good care of Wanwan." After saying that, Song Zi pulled Zhang Xinyu towards where her driver parked his car, fearing that she would disturb Yu Wanwan and Shenyi. Shenyi watched them leave before helping Yu Wanwan back into the car. Yu Wanwan was already drunk and a little confused. She frowned and mumbled something, but her voice was too soft for Shenyi to hear. Seeing that she was about to fall to one side, Shenyi quickly reached out to support her head, helped her up, and let her lean on his arms. Shenyi touched her head and said softly, "Go to sleep." Yu Wanwan hummed twice again, then fell asleep in Shenyi's arms. The car was very quiet and Shenyi had nothing else to do, so his eyes unconsciously fell on Yu Wanwan, who was leaning on his shoulder. In the evening, when he got off work, he called Yu Wanwan, wanting to ask where she was and to pick her up and go home together. But no one answered the 2 calls. Chapter 39. Are you worried about her safety? He didn't know why, he just didn't answer 2 calls, but he felt inexplicably anxious. Most likely her phone was muted and she didn't hear his call. Besides, Yu Wanwan had a retired military bodyguard driver by her side, so her safety could be guaranteed. But Shenyi still felt his heart pounding. The feeling of panic made Shenyi feel like he was going to lose Yu Wanwan in the next second. Unable to find Yu Wanwan, he called Yu Wanwan's driver to confirm Yu Wanwan's location and make sure she was safe. However, the panic in Shenyi's heart still did not disappear. He had an idea in his mind, which was to go and see Yu Wanwan as soon as possible. If he doesn't go, he will definitely regret it. So he came over, and it wasn't until he saw Yu Wanwan drinking with her bestie in the bar that Shenyi felt relieved. But Shenyi was still a little at a loss. He had never had such uncontrollable emotions before. He didn't even know why he was so panicked. "Are you worried about Yu Wanwan?" But she was clearly in no danger. Shenyi sighed helplessly and said, "Forget it, I don't want to think about it anymore." After arriving home, Shenyi got out of the car, leaned over slightly and picked up Yu Wanwan from the car. Yu Wanwan is very light, and Shenyi has been exercising all year round, so he didn't feel any difficulty when carrying her to the villa. The servant saw that his wife was carried in, and hurried over to see what was going on. As soon as he approached, he smelled the smell of alcohol, so he said quickly, "I'll go prepare the hangover soup." "Okay, I'll send it to the bedroom upstairs in a while," Shenyi said as he went upstairs. Back in the bedroom, Shenyi carefully put Yu Wanwan on the bed, hesitating whether to give her a bath directly or wipe her and let her rest first. Thinking that Yu Wanwan was a misophobe, he ran water in the bathroom and waited until everything was ready before he carried Yu Wanwan to the bathroom. Fortunately, Yi Wanwan was very well behaved after getting drunk and didn't make any noise. Shinyi helped her take a bath smoothly. When Shinyi came out holding Yi Wanwan, the housekeeper also brought over some sobering soup. Perhaps she was a little thirsty. When Shinyi fed her the sobering soup, Yi Wanwan consciously smacked her lips and started drinking it. Looking at her unconscious movements, Shinyi curled up the corner of his mouth into a faint smile. When she had almost finished drinking, he put Yi Wanwan into the bed and covered her with the quilt. Yi Wanwan turned over, found a comfortable position and fell asleep. Shinyi leaned over and gave her a light kiss on the forehead. The next day, when Yi Wanwan woke up, she just felt dazed and confused. She felt for her cell phone at the bedside, picked it up and checked the time, then threw the phone next to the pillow and continued to stare at the ceiling in a daze. But suddenly, Yi Wanwan's eyes widened like a frightened kitten. Her memory still remained that she went to the bar with her best friend yesterday, drank a lot of alcohol, and got drunk. In a daze, she saw Shinyi. As for what happened next, Yi Wanwan had no recollection of it at all. Yi Wanwan was terrified, not knowing if she had said anything she shouldn't have after getting drunk last night. Yi Wanwan sighed, raised her hand and rubbed her long hair randomly, then fell down again. Chapter 40 Unsuccessful Phone Call. It was not until Yi Wanwan felt hungry that she got up from the bed. After a simple wash, she went downstairs listlessly to have breakfast. While eating breakfast, I kept thinking about whether I said anything weird last night. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't remember. Yi Wanwan put down the spoon in her hand and sighed with great melancholy. "Madam, are you feeling unwell?" the servant asked. Before their husband left, he specifically told his wife that she had drunk some alcohol last night and he would wait and see if she still had a headache after she woke up. Yi Wanwan shook her head, but still looked listless. "It's okay." After stuffing the last bite of the steamed dumpling into her mouth, Yi Wanwan left the restaurant and sat down in the living room. Just after I sat down for a while, the maid came over with the family landline phone. "Madam, it's their husband calling." Yi Wanwan was stunned for a moment before answering the phone. She replied nervously, "Hello." On the phone, Shinyi asked in a low voice, "Have you had breakfast?" "Yeah." Yi Wanwan responded. "Will you have a headache?" Shinyi asked again. Yi Wanwan shook her head, then realized that she was on the phone. She shook her head so that Shinyi couldn't see it, and quickly replied, "No headache." The person on the other end of the phone fell silent. It seemed as if they were not used to chatting on the phone like this, and couldn't find a suitable topic for a moment. Yi Wanwan didn't say anything, but her heart was beating rapidly. I was wondering whether I had talked nonsense to Shinyi last night. The two of them remained silent for nearly half a minute until they heard other people talking from Shinyi's side. Shinyi then said, "Then I'll go to the meeting first." "Oh." Yi Wanwan breathed a sigh of relief. Shinyi seemed quite normal, so she probably didn't say anything she shouldn't have said yesterday. After hanging up the phone, thinking that Shinyi was busy with work, I suddenly remembered that my resume was not ready yet. Yi Wanwan got off the sofa, went straight to the study on the second floor, found her laptop, and then stayed in the study to continue preparing her resume. Yi Wanwan had never worked before, so naturally she had never prepared a resume. Even though there were tons of resume texts online, Yi Wanwan still spent several hours on it. When Yi Wanwan finally prepared her resume and was about to submit it, she stopped again. Even at this point, Yi Wanwan still hasn't decided what to do. Yi Wanwan majored in business administration in college, but she was obviously not interested in it. There are people doing various jobs in all walks of life, but Yi Wanwan seemed to be not interested in any of them. Yi Wanwan was a little discouraged. She had worked for so many hours and finally finished her resume, but she didn't even know what she wanted to do or which company to send her resume to. Shinyi did not have any social engagements today, nor did he stay in the company to work overtime. When it was time to get off work, he left the company like most of the company's employees, rushing out during the evening rush hour. As soon as I got home, I saw Yi Wanwan sitting on the sofa, holding a fruit plate in her arms, unconsciously stuffing fruit into her mouth, looking very sad. "What's going on?" Shinyi walked over, loosened his tie and unbuttoned his shirt, and asked, "Why are you unhappy?" Yi Wanwan suddenly heard a voice and turned her head to see Shinyi. She was a little surprised and asked, "Why are you back so early?" Chapter 41 Let us choose. "I'm done with work." Shinyi sat down on the sofa and continued to ask, "What's wrong with you?" Yi Wanwan sighed in frustration, I prepared my resume today, but I haven't even decided where to submit it. If you haven't made up your mind, just take your time to think about it. There's no need to rush. Shani comforted. After all, their family doesn't need Wanwan to work to subsidize the family income, so she has plenty of time to think about what she really wants to do. Wanwan still looked dejected. I think about it over and over again, but I can't think of what I like or what I'm good at. I feel like I'm just a waste. Why am I so useless? Wanwan stretched out her voice while leaning back on the sofa, looking as if she had lost all hope in life. Shinyi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why did he even scold himself? You are good. Don't doubt yourself. You will find a job that suits you, Shinyi said with certainty. He was not trying to comfort Wanwan, but he truly thought she was a good person. As far as he knew, Wanwan could dance ballet and had studied piano and violin for many years. Although her academic performance was not top-notch, she had been admitted to the business administration program at Peking University based on her own abilities. It's just that the Yi family is too prestigious, so when people mention Wanwan, they will think of her being the only daughter of the Yi family and how much the Yi family dotes on her, but instead ignore Wanwan's own excellence. However, Shinyi also understood that Wanwan wanted to work. Perhaps it was really like what she told him that day, that she was too bored at home alone. Seeing Wanwan still looking unhappy, Shinyi thought for a moment and said, "There's an auction tomorrow night. Let's go and choose something together." Wanwan turned her head to look at Shinyi with mixed feelings. Although she was also born into a wealthy family, how could Shinyi make things worth hundreds of thousands or even tens of millions at an auction sound as easy as shopping in a supermarket? The two looked at each other blankly. After a long while, Shinyi continued to ask, "Don't you want to go?" Wanwan shook her head, "I don't want to." Although she was crazy in her previous life, she lived for more than 10 years and was reborn. She no longer cared about money. Before Wanwan finished her sigh, she heard Shinyi continue, "I heard that there is a bottle of antique-level perfume at this auction." Shinyi didn't know anything about perfume, but he knew that Wanwan liked perfume. When his assistant first mentioned this auction to him, he just asked his assistant to go and see and help him buy the bottle of perfume. But knowing that Wanwan would be too bored at home alone, Shinyi thought of taking her there to see the sight. After he finished speaking, seeing Wanwan's eyes light up, Shinyi thought it would be a good idea to squeeze out some time to accompany her. He raised his hand and touched the top of Wanwan's head lovingly. "I'll go with you tomorrow night." "Yeah." Wanwan nodded vigorously. She almost forgot that her favorite bottle of perfume in her previous life was bought by Shinyi at an auction shortly after she married Shinyi. Wanwan instantly forgot about the indifferent self just now. She couldn't miss her treasure. The depressed mood that had accumulated in her whole afternoon completely disappeared after a few words with Shinyi, and her sweet smile appeared again. Chapter 42. Is this a date? Shinyi felt like he was poisoned recently. He hoped that Wanwan would always smile like this and be happy forever. The next day, Wanwan still slept until she woke up naturally, and then started her boring day. She downloaded 2 job hunting apps and looked at recruitment information from various companies. However, the information she could find was too one-sided. She had no idea what the company did specifically, and even the position she was applying for was very vague. In the end, no one invested, but Wanwan's mood was not affected today. She has been looking forward to the auction tonight. She has to buy her darling and keep it as a treasure. At around 12 noon, Wanwan was sitting at the dining table eating, biting a piece of her favorite sweet and sour pork ribs in her mouth, when suddenly, her cell phone rang. Wanwan took the phone with her free hands. It was Shinyi calling. Wanwan answered the call, but she had a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs in her mouth, so her words were a little unclear. "Hello." Listening to Wanwan's voice, Shinyi asked gently, "Are you eating?" "Yeah." Wanwan responded vaguely, then chewed quickly and swallowed the food in her mouth. The sound became clearer. "Yeah, I'm eating." "What's wrong?" Shinyi on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment. Couldn't he just call her if there was nothing wrong? Wanwan didn't hear their voice, and subconsciously asked again, "Is there something you want to talk to me about?" "There's a newly opened Western restaurant near the company. I heard it's pretty good. Shall we go there together in the evening?" Shinyi asked. Wanwan was stunned. She didn't expect that Shinyi wanted to have dinner with her. Shinyi continued, "After eating, we can go to the auction." There was no sound coming from the phone, and Shinyi couldn't help but tighten his hand holding the phone a little. Don't you want to go? Shinyi's voice became a little fainter, no longer as gentle as it was at the beginning. No, no. Yi Wanwan retorted quickly. She just couldn't react for a moment. She hadn't yet adapted to the fact that she and Shinyi were still in a happy marriage. Then why don't you take a nap after dinner, and let the driver take you to the company when you wake up? Shinyi restrained the panic in his heart and patiently asked Yi Wanwan what she thought. Okay. Yi Wanwan did not hesitate this time and agreed immediately. After hanging up the phone, Yi Wanwan continued to eat, but she had a piece of sweet and sour pork ribs in her mouth that she couldn't swallow for a long time. Shinyi asked her to have dinner at a Western restaurant. Is this considered a date? For some reason, Yi Wanwan felt blushing and her heart beating fast when she thought about going on a date with Shinyi, and she even felt a little excited. Yi Wanwan was speechless. They were already married, so what was there to be excited about? But my heart started beating uncontrollably fast. Then she thought about her past life. After she started taking medicine to control her emotions, her memory declined. Yi Wanwan had forgotten some of the memories when she first got married to Shinyi. But at the beginning, she and Shinyi had a very happy marriage. It was later that she became an unreasonable person, and everything began to change. Thinking of this, Yi Wanwan sighed and felt a little melancholy. He was so nice in the beginning, why did he become such an unreasonable person later? Chapter 43. You can come anytime. According to usual habit, Yi Wanwan would take a nap after dinner, but today she couldn't fall asleep while lying in bed. Yi Wanwan stared at the ceiling for a long time, finally turned over, got out of bed, and walked into the cloakroom barefoot. In the huge cloakroom, only a quarter of the space was occupied by Shinyi's clothes and accessories, and the rest were all Yi Wanwan's. Yi Wanwan carefully selected a skirt for herself, changed her clothes and went to the dressing table to start putting on makeup. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Shinyi had just come down from a meeting upstairs. When he came out of the stairs, he saw from afar his colleagues in the department distributing drinks such as coffee and milk tea. Normally Shinyi wouldn't care about these things, but they couldn't be too ostentatious. What would it look like to eat and drink while talking and laughing during working hours? Shinyi walked over with a frown on his face, but before he could say anything, he heard one of his colleagues say excitedly, "Manager Shin, your wife is here and has ordered afternoon tea for everyone. She's waiting in the office now." Although Shinyi is only Manager Shin now, everyone in the company knows that Shinyi is the prince of Jinghong and will definitely take over the Jinghong group in the future. So Manager Shin's wife will naturally be the boss's lady in the future. Moreover, this was the first time they met Yi Wanwan, so naturally they couldn't help but feel a little excited. When Shinyi heard that Yi Wanwan was coming, his frown disappeared and he looked a little surprised. He raised his hand and glanced at his watch. It was just past 3 o'clock. Why did she come here? Shinyi didn't say a word and walked quickly towards his office. Shinyi's office was separated by transparent glass and the blinds inside were not drawn, so Shinyi saw the person standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in the office before he even arrived at the office. There was a sound when the door was pushed open, and Yi Wanwan inside also turned around. "Why are you here so early?" Shinyi asked in a light tone. Yi Wanwan pulled the corners of her mouth to smile a little awkwardly. "I couldn't sleep, so I came directly here." "Will it disturb your work?" She had already arrived at Shinyi's office when she suddenly remembered that coming to the company so early would disturb Shinyi's work. "I was thinking more about whether I shouldn't have come to the company. Was she following me too closely?" She was too paranoid in her previous life and wanted to tie Shinyi to her side and keep an eye on him all the time. Yi Wanwan was thinking that she should go find a cafe downstairs, or go to a shopping mall nearby, and not focus all her attention on Shinyi. But before she could leave, Shinyi came back from the meeting. Shinyi put the folder in his hand on the desk, then walked to Yi Wanwan and said softly, "No." Yi Wanwan breathed a sigh of relief. "That's good. As long as I'm here, you can come over anytime. You won't disturb my work." As Shinyi spoke, he reached out and brought Yi Wanwan into his arms. "What are you doing?" Yi Wanwan was a little surprised and subconsciously wanted to push Shinyi away. But Shinyi didn't give her a chance. He smoothly held her in his arms, resting his chin on the top of her head, feeling the presence of the person in his arms. That feeling of real existence made Shinyi feel at ease. Chapter 44. Our relationship is legal. "Shinyi, don't hug me, people outside will see it." Yi Wanwan was very embarrassed and struggled in Shenyi's arms. This happened in the office, the glass was transparent, and even the blinds were not drawn. People outside the office would definitely see it. Shenyi did not let go, and said as a matter of course, "Our relationship is legal, so what's wrong with hugging?" Yi Wanwan was unable to refute for a moment. Yi Wanwan felt that Shenyi seemed a little different. She remembered that Shenyi in her previous life was definitely not like he is now. Fortunately, Shenyi quickly let go of Yi Wanwan. "I still have some work to deal with, you stay here for a while, I will deal with it as soon as possible." "Yeah." Yi Wanwan nodded quickly, then pushed the man towards the desk and said, "Go and take care of your work. I'll wait for you here." Shenyi really sat down at his desk and started to deal with the work at hand. Yi Wanwan was sitting on a small sofa not far away. At first, she was pretending to play with her mobile phone, but in fact, she was secretly looking at Shenyi. As I watched, my mind began to wander. She really felt that Shenyi seemed a little different from his previous life. The initial memory was a little fuzzy, but she still remembered that at that time she was always sticking to Shenyi, kissing and hugging him, and she was also the one chattering about going to dinner here today and going to see a new movie tomorrow. Is it because she is not so proactive now that Shenyi becomes proactive? She remembered again the day when Shenyi returned from Banshan Yunjing and told her that he married her because he liked her and thought it would be nice to spend his life with her. Yi Wanwan felt a little sour in the tip of her nose. Although she had always thought that the tragedy in her previous life was caused by her, she actually still had resentment towards Shenyi in her heart when she was reborn. So her first thought was to stop loving Shenyi, instead of changing her terrible desire for control and being with Shenyi. However, in the past few days she felt more and more that she had no right to resent Shenyi. He didn't know anything about cosmetics, but when someone mentioned limited edition, he naturally thought of himself. I wanted to go out to work, so I said a few words casually, and when I saw that she was unhappy, I immediately agreed. When he feels bored at home, he will think about taking time to accompany her. He had clearly done well enough. She ended up dying of depression in her previous life, it was all her own fault, so what about Shenyi? What did he do wrong? After Shenyi finished the work at hand, he took Yi Wanwan and left the company before 5 o'clock. As soon as they left, the office suddenly became noisy with all kinds of jokes. Many employees here have been here before Shenyi came, so they have always had the impression that Manager Shen is a workaholic, but recently, it seems that this is no longer the case. Yi Wanwan and her friends arrived at the restaurant quite early, and there were only a few tables of guests in the huge restaurant. Shenyi asked his assistant to reserve a table in advance, and the waiter took them to the terrace on the 3rd floor. Compared with the dim lights in the room, it is less ambiguous, but it is more comfortable when the breeze blows. Shenyi walked over, pulled out a chair and looked at Yi Wanwan. His meaning was very clear, asking her to sit down first. Yi Wanwan smiled with curved eyebrows, sat down on the chair, and said calmly, "Thank you." Chapter 45 Don't Touch Me. Shenyi sat down opposite them. The waiter came over to take their order. The two of them quickly ordered their meals. The waiter then turned around and left silently without disturbing the beautiful couple. They were the only table on the 3rd floor terrace at the moment, and their violinist was some distance away from them. The piano sounds soothing, the evening breeze blows gently, the afterglow of the setting sun dyes half the sky red, and a pair of beautiful women sit opposite each other, which is pleasing to the eye no matter how you look at them. Shenyi is a very well-educated person, and the person sitting opposite him is his wife, so he is even more considerate. He even cuts the steak before handing it to Yi Wanwan. Yi Wanwan was a little nervous at first. After all, she was living a new life and she couldn't even remember what the scene was like when she last dated Shenyi. But after eating a small piece of steak cut by Shenyi, Yi Wanwan's attention was instantly attracted by the steak. It tasted really good. "This is delicious." Yi Wanwan looked up at Shenyi and said to him with shining eyes. Shenyi smiled gently, "As long as you like it." Looking at her eating the food with such big mouthfuls, Shenyi didn't know why, but he felt inexplicably happy in his heart. He felt that as long as she could eat it, it was good. Shenyi paused while cutting the steak, a hint of doubt flashed in his eyes. Why did he have such an idea? Seeing that Shenyi was still cutting the steak slowly, Yi Wanwan directly forked a small piece from her plate and stretched her hand in front of Shenyi. Shenyi came back to his senses, suppressed the strange emotions in his heart, leaned forward, opened his mouth and bit off the steak. "How is it? Is it pretty good?" Yi Wanwan asked expectantly. Well, not bad. Shinyi nodded in agreement. Yi Wanwan happily continued to eat steak. She seemed to really like the taste of this restaurant and ate a lot during the meal. When Shinyi went to pay the bill, Yi Wanwan stood not far away and looked down at her belly. The skirt she wore today was waist-hugging, which originally showed off her perfect waistline, but now that she was full, Yi Wanwan felt that her belly was coming out. Yi Wanwan touched her lower abdomen, feeling a little embarrassed. She had been so busy eating that she accidentally ate too much. Now that I think about it, she seems to eat more than Shinyi. After Shinyi paid the bill, he turned around and saw Yi Wanwan touching her lower abdomen. He frowned slightly, walked over quickly, and asked with some concern, "What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable?" Yi Wanwan looked up at Shinyi, feeling a little embarrassed. "No, I just ate too much by accident and ate my belly full." "I'm glad you don't feel uncomfortable." Shinyi's frown finally relaxed. He stood in front of Yi Wanwan and reached out his hand to touch her lower abdomen naturally. Shinyi's sudden action frightened Yi Wanwan. She subconsciously tightened her lower abdomen and looked at Shinyi with horror. "What's wrong?" Shinyi asked with a confused look on his face. "Don't touch me." Yi Wanwan's face turned red, feeling very embarrassed. Who would casually touch a girl's belly? Even if Shinyi is her husband, it won't work. Doesn't she have any face? Shinyi looked at Yi Wanwan's face, which suddenly turned red, then looked down at his hand, which was still on Yi Wanwan's lower abdomen, and suddenly understood. Heh. He couldn't help but tilt his head and chuckle. Yi Wanwan felt even more embarrassed by this smile, and her cheeks felt as if they were burned by fire. Chapter 46. No one answers. Don't laugh. Yi Wanwan glared at Shinyi in embarrassment. Shinyi nodded, restrained his smile, and took Yi Wanwan's hand instead. "It's almost time, let's go." Yi Wanwan fell behind by a step, looking at Shinyi's back, her heart full of regret. Why didn't she think of controlling herself when she was eating just now? It was too late to say anything now. Yi Wanwan could only keep breathing in and tightening her abdomen. When they arrived at the auction venue, quite a few people had already arrived. The auction had not officially started yet, so most people here were walking around and greeting people. When Shinyi appeared with Yi Wanwan, it still caused a small commotion. However, when faced with such an occasion, Yi Wanwan was very calm and not at all timid. Before marrying Shinyi, she was the only daughter of the Yi family. She was brought up pampered by the Yi family. What kind of occasions had she not seen since she was a child? There were people present who had cooperation with Jinghong Group, and when they saw Shinyi coming with his wife, they naturally came over to say hello. Yi Wanwan was responsible for being a quiet vase, standing beside Shinyi and listening to him quietly. Fortunately, the auction officially started soon, and the auctioneer came on stage and started to get down to business. Shinyi leaned closer to Yi Wanwan and whispered in her ear, "If you want anything, take a picture of it." Yi Wanwan's ears felt a little itchy when Shinyi spoke close to her ear. She shrank back subconsciously, then responded softly, "Okay." However, Yi Wanwan never bought anything until the auction was coming to an end, when the bottle of perfume that Yi Wanwan was looking forward to appeared. Yi Wanwan's eyes lit up. The entire auction process went smoothly. Shinyi raised his paddle and raised the price 3 times, and the item was successfully won by Shinyi at a price of 1.2 million. After the auction was over, Yi Wanwan couldn't wait to get her own perfume. The staff had already prepared it. Yi Wanwan took it carefully, leaned in to smell it, and was immediately impressed by the smell. It is indeed her most precious perfume. Shinyi couldn't help laughing when he saw her satisfied look. After taking the perfume and preparing to leave, Yi Wanwan handed the bag of perfume to Shinyi and said to him very seriously, "Please keep it for me for a while, I'm going to the bathroom and will be back soon." "Go ahead." Shinyi was helpless. She loved this perfume so much that she was worried even about going to the bathroom. "Please keep it safe." After Yi Wanwan walked out a few steps, she couldn't help but turn back and remind Shinyi. After seeing Shinyi nod, he quickly went to the bathroom. Shinyi shook his head helplessly and stood at the corner at the end of the corridor waiting for Yi Wanwan. 10 minutes passed and Shinyi didn't care. Girls usually take longer to go to the bathroom. After a while, Shinyi raised his hand and looked at his watch. Yi Wanwan had been in the bathroom for almost 20 minutes. Shinyi couldn't help but frown. Why hasn't he come out after so long? Shinyi didn't hesitate for a few seconds, and walked towards the bathroom while calling Yi Wanwan on his mobile phone. He called but no one answered. When Shenyi went outside the lady's room, there was still no one answering the phone, so Shenyi raised his voice and shouted, "Wan Wan." Chapter 47 Fainting. Shenyi's voice was very loud, and the people in the bathroom must have heard it. However, Shenyi did not wait for Yi Wanwan's response, and the bathroom became unusually quiet. Shenyi's heart was pounding like thunder, and he rushed in without caring whether there was anyone else in the bathroom. The next moment, Shenyi saw Yi Wanwan fainted on the ground. Wanwan. Shenyi rushed over quickly, and when he half knelt down, his knees hit the ground hard. Shenyi had no time to care about it, and the bag in his hand was thrown aside. Wanwan. Shenyi picked up Yi Wanwan, who was lying on the cold floor. Looking at her unconscious appearance with her eyes closed, Shenyi felt a sudden pain in his head. The pain was like a needle suddenly inserted into the brain, causing Shenyi's brain to go blank for a moment, but he still subconsciously wanted to pick up Yi Wanwan. But the moment he picked up Yi Wanwan, he staggered and almost fell to the ground. Shenyi ran out holding Yi Wanwan in his arms. The noise naturally attracted the auction staff and guests who had not yet left. A staff member went up to inquire about the situation, but Shenyi ignored him and walked straight towards the gate. They were originally planning to go back, and now the driver had already driven the car to the door and was waiting. The driver was sitting in the car. When he saw the situation in the distance, his face immediately became serious. He quickly got out of the car and opened the back door. "What's wrong?" the driver asked anxiously. "Go to the hospital," Shenyi said in a deep voice. "Oh, okay." The driver didn't hesitate. After closing the door, he got in the car quickly, started the engine, and rushed to the hospital. Shenyi looked down at Yi Wanwan, who was unconscious in his arms. His mind was hazy and many unreal images seemed to flash through it. He raised his hand to brush away a strand of hair that was stuck to her cheek, but found that his hands were shaking. The moment he touched her cheek, Shenyi felt a sharp pain in his heart. He subconsciously hugged Yi Wanwan tightly, letting her cheek rest on his chest. It's okay." Shenyi's voice was trembling as he murmured slowly, but no one knew who he was talking to. It only took them a dozen minutes to reach the hospital. Shenyi rushed into the hospital holding Yi Wanwan. A nurse came to help immediately after seeing the situation. Yi Wanwan was sent to the emergency room. The doctor asked about Yi Wanwan's medical history and current condition. Shenyi gave a brief answer and was then pushed away by a group of doctors and nurses. Shenyi wanted to go forward, but was worried about disturbing the doctor, so he could only stand at a distance and watch. Several doctors and nurses surrounded the person lying on the bed and examined him. Finally, an intern asked in confusion, "Her vital signs are all normal." The people who were originally surrounding Yi Wanwan to do various basic examinations stopped what they were doing. The values displayed on the monitor were telling them that the patient was normal. "How is she?" Shenyi had been staring at her. Seeing that the doctors and nurses had stopped, he immediately walked forward to ask. One of the doctors looked at Shenyi and explained to him, "The patient's vital signs are normal now. As for why she suddenly fainted, more detailed examinations will be needed later." "Is she okay now?" Shenyi frowned, with a hint of doubt in his eyes. Chapter 48 The test results are out. "She has already fainted, and everything is fine." Shenyi couldn't help but feel a surge of anger in his heart. Are these people doctors? Just as Shenyi was about to question these people, Yi Wanwan, who had been breathing steadily, suddenly took a deep breath and exhaled heavily. A young nurse noticed Yi Wanwan's slightly blinking eyes and said, "The patient seems to be waking up." Shenyi was overwhelmed by these words, and no longer cared about these doctors. He squeezed directly to the side of the bed. At this time, Yi Wanwan had already opened her eyes, but the dazzling light made her frown. She looked at the person in front of her in a daze and had not yet reacted. "Wanwan." Shenyi's voice was very soft, as if he was worried that his voice was too loud and would scare her. Shenyi gently touched her cheek and asked softly, "How is it? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere?" Yi Wanwan still stared at Shenyi blankly, not knowing what was going on. Her voice was a little hoarse. "What's wrong with me?" Shenyi patiently explained, "You suddenly fainted in the bathroom and are now in the hospital." Yi Wanwan frowned, her eyes full of confusion. "Did she faint? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere now?" Shenyi continued to ask. Yi Wanwan shook her head. She didn't feel any discomfort anywhere. She didn't even know why she fainted. Didn't she go to the bathroom? She remembered that she just went to the bathroom and then prepared to wash her hands after using the toilet. Then. And then it comes to now. I'm glad you're not feeling uncomfortable. Shinyi smiled gently at Yi Wanwan, as if to comfort her confusion. Yi Wanwan was taken for many examinations and finally arranged to stay in the VIP ward. Shinyi whispered to her, "Can you rest for a while? I'll be back soon." "Yeah." Yi Wanwan nodded blankly in agreement. She was still confused and didn't understand why she suddenly fainted. She didn't feel any discomfort before she fainted. It was as if there was a system failure and it suddenly got stuck. When she logged in again, everything returned to normal. Shinyi came out of the ward, glanced at the doctor standing waiting in the corridor, and walked a few steps to the side. "Mr. Shin, Mrs. Shin's test results are out. Everything is normal, there is no problem," said Dr. Lee. Shinyi frowned. If everything is normal, then why did she faint? "Maybe you should give me a reasonable explanation." This. Dr. Lee was speechless for a moment. They really couldn't explain why Mrs. Shin suddenly fainted. They did all the tests that could be done, and the results showed that everything was normal. Mrs. Shin could be said to be in very good health. As for why he suddenly fainted, Dr. Lee couldn't explain it clearly. Seeing that the other party couldn't say anything, Shinyi's face became even gloomier, and he even had anger that was difficult to conceal. But his emotions were of no use, and no one could tell him why Yi Wanwan was like this. Shinyi turned around, took a deep breath, and tried to control his emotions. "You can go now." "Okay, if Mrs. Shin feels uncomfortable, Mr. Shin can just ring the bell. I'll be leaving first," Dr. Lee said. Shinyi did not respond. Dr. Lee was very self-aware. He probably had been regarded as a mediocre doctor who knew nothing. It would be better for him to leave quickly. Chapter 49. Would he be so unlucky as to get a terminal illness? After Dr. Lee left, Shinyi stood alone in the quiet corridor for several minutes until he controlled his emotions. Only then did Shinyi turn around and go back to the ward. Although it was late at night, Yi Wanwan was not sleepy at all. She was leaning on the hospital bed, waiting for Shinyi to come back. She still didn't understand why she suddenly fainted. Whether before she fainted or after she woke up, she felt fine all over her body, without any discomfort at all. As a result, I suddenly felt dizzy, which was really hard to understand. When she heard the sound of the door opening, Yi Wanwan subconsciously sat up straight, staring at the door without blinking. When Shinyi came in, he saw Yi Wanwan sitting on the hospital bed. It was obvious that she was waiting for him to tell her the results of the examination. Shinyi walked over, sat down beside the bed, and reached out to touch Yi Wanwan's head. "What's wrong with me?" Seeing that Shinyi didn't say anything, Yi Wanwan had to ask herself. She indeed didn't feel unwell, but her sudden fainting still made Yi Wanwan have countless guesses in her mind. Especially seeing Shinyi like this, Yi Wanwan thought, since she was lucky enough to be reborn, would she also be unlucky enough to suffer from a terminal illness? "It's nothing, the examination results show everything is fine," Shinyi comforted. "Then why did I faint?" Yi Wanwan frowned and asked the same question as Shinyi. The doctor was unable to tell Shinyi the answer, and Shinyi didn't know how to answer Yi Wanwan. Shinyi was silent for a long time, then told Yi Wanwan, "The doctor said you are a little anemic, it may be caused by anemia." Yi Wanwan didn't know whether anemia could cause people to faint, but looking at Shinyi's expression, she was sure that Shinyi was lying to her. Is she really suffering from a terminal illness? She has just been reborn, is she going to die again? Yi Wanwan was so frightened that her eyes suddenly turned red. She pouted and looked at Shinyi, looking like she was about to lose control of her emotions and burst into tears. What's wrong with you?" Shinyi was also panicked, and even began to stutter. He held Yi Wanwan's shoulders and asked anxiously, "What's wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" Yi Wanwan shook her head, tears falling uncontrollably from her eyes, and choked up, "I don't feel unwell anywhere, how come I have a terminal illness? Am I going to die soon?" When Shinyi heard the word death, he felt that his heartbeat stopped at that moment. He quickly came to his senses and said in a deep voice, "Who said you have a terminal illness? Then why do you have that expression?" The more Yi Wanwan thought about it, the sadder she became, and she could no longer control her tears. She was reborn and wanted to reform herself and no longer be the stupid person she was in her previous life, but she ended up getting a terminal illness. Shinyi was stunned and realized that it was his unclear words and heavy expression that caused Yi Wanwan to misunderstand him. He quickly explained, "You are not sick, all the tests are normal. But you fainted for no apparent reason, and I am very worried." "Really?" Yi Wanwan sobbed and looked so pitiful. Shen nodded quickly, "Well, if you don't believe it, you can go ask the doctor yourself." Seeing that Shen spoke so confidently and didn't seem to be lying at all, Yi Wanwan slowly calmed down. However, her shoulders were still twitching and there were traces of tears on her face. Chapter 50, Mobilizing the Army. Shen was originally full of worries, but now he felt more guilty. He raised his hand and gently wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes with his fingertips. "I'm sorry for scaring you." He shouldn't have brought that kind of panic to Yi Wanwan and frightened her like this. Maybe he shouldn't think too much about it. The physical examination showed nothing wrong. Maybe this fainting was really just an accident. It's already late. Go wipe your face and go to bed early, Shen said. Yi Wanwan felt that she would definitely not be able to sleep, but looking at Shen, she finally nodded. The next day, Yi Wanwan slept until she woke up naturally, stretched herself lazily with great satisfaction, and then slowly opened her eyes. But when she opened her eyes, the hands she had just raised stopped in mid-air and did not fall down. It took Yi Wanwan several seconds to come back to her senses. She seemed to find it a little unreal and shouted with a doubtful tone, "Mom." At this moment, Zhouzhou had already stood up and came to Yi Wanwan's side, awake. "Yeah." Yi Wanwan nodded. "How do you feel? Are you still feeling uncomfortable?" Zhouzhou asked with concern. "I'm fine, why are you here?" Yi Wanwan really felt that she was in good condition, without any discomfort at all. She even didn't stay in her bed last night and slept until she woke up naturally. "What do you mean it's okay? You fainted and you still say it's okay?" Zhouzhou glared at Yi Wanwan. How could someone not take his own body seriously? When she learned this morning that her baby had fainted, she almost fainted from fright. "I had a checkup last night and the doctor said everything was normal," Yi Wanwan retorted in a low voice. Zhouzhou heard it and glared at her again. "This naughty child, she still doesn't give me peace of mind even after getting married." Zhouzhou and Yi Jinhua had already understood the situation long before Yi Wanwan woke up, and of course they knew that her examination results were normal. But it was a fact that she fainted, so Zhouzhou naturally couldn't feel at ease. Now that he saw Yi Wanwan had woken up and looked pretty good, he could finally put his mind at ease. After a while, Shen and Yi Jinhua came back from outside. Yi Wanwan was still sitting on the hospital bed. When she saw her father, she hurriedly called out, "Dad." Yi Jinhua came over and also showed some concern for Yi Wanwan. He checked her physical condition and was relieved when he was sure that she was not feeling unwell. Shen said at the side, "The doctor said you can be discharged from the hospital." Originally, Yi Wanwan had been in good health since she woke up yesterday, and there was no need for her to stay in the hospital. So the four of them left the hospital and returned to Beihai together. They had just returned to Beihai not long ago when Lin Shu and Shen Yunan arrived. They also heard about their daughter-in-law fainting this morning. "But I found out about it too late, so I didn't go to the hospital and came directly to Beihai." Yi Wanwan felt a little embarrassed. She fainted for no apparent reason and nothing happened to her, but she had to make all the elders in her family come to see her. She felt really embarrassed. Fortunately, they stayed for a meal and then left. Shen did not go to the company today, but stayed at home with Yi Wanwan, and asked someone to arrange a nutritionist for the family. Yi Wanwan was listening to Shen talking on the phone and for a moment she really didn't know what to say.